He's stuck in a deadly mystical game to solve a mystery that is important to him. No hacks, no buffs, except one. He's been hoarding billions of merit points and he's ready to cash them in. While others grind or die, he just buys his way to god-tier skills. One mistake, and it's game over, permanently. Will billions of points make him unstoppable, or just empty? Let's find out. The story began with the blood moon rising. A catastrophe ensued. Original sin descended, the world was at a turning point. For him, it's just a game, all because he has money and power. While others were fighting for their lives in the dungeons, he was getting billions without much effort, emptying the store, awakening supernatural powers, constantly winning with his teammates. Who else could do this? He was chosen to be the savior. After some time, the protagonist helped the laborers and received 500 merit points. The head of the shelter said that if it weren't for him, the shelter would have been closed a long time ago. They don't even know how to thank him. The protagonist replied with a smile, "There is no reason to worry. He does everything from the bottom of his heart." A system window appeared, which said that his current balance is 11,451,143 points. He walked further and thought that his name was Lin Guyan. He had no home, no car, and his parents were dead. And he was tied to the system. The MC came to the apartment complex and asked the guard to open the gate. He asked with a smile, did he do good deeds again? The protagonist answered with a smile that it was his parents' last wish. The system window said that the name was Guyan, age 18, male, tied to the system. The protagonist returned home and thought that 2 years ago, his parents left the system in a single message before disappearing without a trace. The blood-red ones are watching. A great catastrophe is approaching. How to cross the sea of suffering, only by receiving merit. For 2 years, he did good deeds, receiving more and more merit. However, what does using merit points even mean? The MC was calmly quenching his thirst when suddenly the water turned red. He looked out the window in fear and, seeing the bloody moon, stood up in horror. A system window appeared, saying that he had qualified as an original sin player. The first copy would open in 24 hours. The protagonist asked in confusion, what was this? It felt like everything was real. What should he do now? Suddenly, glitches began and the system disappeared, and a moment later it reappeared. The system window said that a low-level system plugin was detected and successfully integrated with the original sin system. The consumption system is unlocked. The available balance is 11,451,143. MC was horrified and thought that now is not the time to panic. He asked if the invitation to the game is still valid. The system window responded that he has access to email. The protagonist thought that the countdown is still going on. It seems that he has nowhere to run. There must be something about what is happening. He took out his phone and started typing in his query, when suddenly a warning popped up, saying that they had detected him searching for the keyword Original Sin Game. If he had received an invitation, then he should visit their web archive with detailed information. If he had heard about the game from another person, then he should contact them. The MC pointed out with a serious face that they even had an official website. It seemed that the game had been around for quite some time. After some time, the protagonist went to the website and started reading the information, saying that firstly, they would have to believe that the original Sin game was not a figment of the imagination. The Human Security Bureau exists to quickly respond to the situation. Note, there may be many monsters and events in the game that contradict science and common sense. Please let the players pay full attention to their own safety. Let them also try to survive and complete the tasks. If they fail the task, they will face serious consequences. By completing the missions, players will be able to get various rewards, treasures, special abilities, and even the fulfillment of their deepest desires. MC noted that this is a game filled from head to toe with monsters, supernatural phenomena, where failure entails serious consequences. But at the same time, successful completion of tasks brings rewards. So, there are risks and opportunities in the game. Is the basic plugin compatible? It seems to have some advantages at the beginning. He thought with a serious face that he must survive, and he doesn't care what awaits him tomorrow. He definitely can't die here. After a while, the protagonist thought that over the past few days, he had collected food, water, warm clothes, and basic medicines. He dressed in a business suit, when suddenly everything around him began to disappear, and he found himself in an empty space. A system window appeared, notifying that there were 15 minutes left before the game began. Let him please enter the preliminary data in advance. MC screamed in horror. Why didn't anyone tell him about this before? A moment later, he appeared at the table with other players. Suddenly, the old man fell off his chair and the protagonist asked excitedly if everything was okay with him. At this point, Sho asked with a serious face, "Are they all new? Has anyone tried to play before?" Stella asked excitedly, "Is this not his first time participating in something like this? Is everything that was written on the internet true?" He agreed and added that the information on the official website was reliable. If they became a player of Original Sin, then they would have to participate once a week. The players asked fearfully, "Once a week?" Shu shouted furiously, "Yes, this life or death game would take place once a week until they died." The MC thought with a serious face that at first it seemed like this man was intimidating them. But in fact, he just needed to share his experience with them. He would try to get him to talk. Maybe he would be able to find out some useful information. The protagonist began to clap his hands in admiration, and noted that such a strong person like him could not have problems surviving. Could he teach them something useful? Sho, with a confident smile, replied that he had some things. First, he should not interfere in other people's affairs. His life is the most valuable and important thing he has. Second, he should forget about the existence of common sense. Demons, spirits, ghosts, all of this is in the game, and most importantly, there are some special rules. Breaking them will lead to an even faster death than from the clutches of monsters. The protagonist thought that the rules, as mentioned on the site, are changing, and they should not be broken. Now he does not understand anything. Ji Qinglin noticed that she received a notification. It said that the store for beginners was unlocked. Did he know anything about this? The other players also began to say that they also have it. Sho replied, "Let them open it and see. They need achievement points to buy things. They will only get this after completing the first round." John shouted furiously, "Well, what is this store for if you can't buy anything in it? This is just some kind of mockery." Shen Yuquan called out to Sho and asked if they could exchange these points for money. He replied with a smile that he had a good imagination. Achievement points could only be exchanged for ancient artifacts that possessed spiritual energy. The protagonist, upon hearing this, immediately sparkled with the desire to participate. A system window appeared, asking if he wanted to exchange virtue points for achievement points. The exchange rate was 1 to 10. MC thought with a smile that he had 11,451,143 merit points. This meant that he could exchange more than 114 million points. So that's what these points were for. The protagonist opened the newbie store and upon seeing the assortment, thought that judging by the rate, he only needed to spend a few thousand and the store would be empty. Let the system exchange 10,000 points. A system window appeared, saying that 10,000 merit points had been exchanged for 100,000 achievement points. The remaining merit balance was 11,441,143 points. The protagonist immediately bought up the entire rookie store. Suddenly, the bride's voice was heard outside, singing a song, like another beautiful time of this year, in which a ghost wedding is celebrated. Stella screamed in fear that someone was singing. John excitedly added that 2 lanterns were still burning. Sho hit the table hard and shouted, "Let them shut up! The game is about to begin." The ghost bride continued to sing, like the red wax of the candles melted. "The maiden with the dowry will not return home." A system window appeared, notifying that the current task is a ghost wedding. An additional condition is that they survive until the end of the wedding in the mountains. In an instant, the location around them changed, and they found themselves at a wedding banquet with crazy people. Qinglin asked what happened to them. Sho replied, "Let her better not ask. The more curiosity, the closer her death." Suddenly, the wedding organizer appeared, who asked discontentedly why they did not even touch the chopsticks. John thought fearfully that he had a terrifying aura, like a dead person. Stella asked excitedly what they should do now. Sho answered with a serious face that she should just ignore him. The wedding planner wondered if their beautiful guests had decided to show them disrespect on such a wonderful day. Let them pour them some wine. After that, the guests immediately surrounded their table. The MC, looking at the food, thought about the paleness of the villagers. It was obvious that they were exhausted, but the dishes on the table looked luxurious. Something was clearly wrong here. Suddenly, the villagers with wild smiles began to try to force-feed them. Crazy children approached the old man asking for a drink of alcohol. He agreed in fear, emptied the bowl, and suddenly fell to the floor in convulsions. People with smiles began to say that he had only taken a sip and was already drunk. And how was he going to last the entire banquet? Qinglin approached him and noticed that his pupils were dilated and his veins were blackened, which meant he was poisoned. The protagonist, watching this, thought like he was sure that there was poison in all food and all drinks. This game is full of dangers. Suddenly, a system window appeared, which said that he had launched a special mission. Saving lives. Let him help other players, and then his merit points will increase. The protagonist glanced at all the players and thought that there was no reaction from them. It seems that this is some kind of exclusive system. Stella hysterically grabbed Sho by the hand and shouted, "What to do now? They need to save him." He furiously threw her away and shouted, like he told them to sit quietly. Now it's his own fault. Saving him can endanger others. If she wants to, then let her do it. MC nobly stood up and noted that he would help him. He took out a mind purification pill, which contains stamens of glowing grass and refined sugar and removes toxins, effective against poisoning. The protagonist thought with a smile that the medicine from the beginner store is much more useful than it seemed. He walked up to the old man and brought the pill to his mouth. Stella was surprised to notice that the item had a pleasant smell. Sho thought irritably, "This guy is a newbie. Where did he get such an item?" MC fed the pill to Yuquan, and he immediately felt better. Stella exclaimed in shock that he was able to heal him. He lifted him up and asked if he was okay. The old man thanked him and replied that without his help, he would have already died. Suddenly, system windows appeared, notifying that a special mission had been completed, saving a life. The content of the mission is to save the poisoned Yuquan. The reward is 7,777 merit points. The protagonist thought with a smile that, as expected, he received even more points for saving a life. Wait, there is another notification. What is this? The system window says that the current task is Ghost Wedding in the Mountains. The first mission is to survive until the end of the ghost wedding. Reward, 1,500 achievement points. The second mission is to save the bride, Bai Ling. Reward, 3,000 achievement points, 3 items in the store. The third mission is to steal the statue of the Ghost of the Three Rivers. Reward, 500 achievement points, 1 item in the store. The fourth mission is to find out the truth about the wedding. Reward, 5,000 achievement points. MC thought, so there's a whole series of missions? Are there other goals in the game besides survival? Basic missions are the easiest, but the rewards are not that big. To get more rewards, you need to find hidden missions. Although he does not lack points, an increase in the assortment in the store can help him. All these missions are worth the effort. After a while, Qinglin asked with a serious face, "Did anyone notice where the villagers went?" The protagonist, picking up a plate from the floor, suggested that they probably ran away while they were all focused on saving the old man. They still don't know what they're up to. John confidently started walking towards the exit and exclaimed that they can't just sit and wait. Shu shouted furiously, "What is he doing? Don't let him act like an idiot." He tried to open the door, but it was no use, and he noticed that it was locked. The man pushed him away and said that he told him not to act rashly. Doesn't he understand? Or does he want to die here? The MC said that he thought he was right. The villagers were clearly hostile towards them. This was better than just sitting and waiting to be killed. Sho answered with a serious face that there were no leads. What made him think that there were no traps on the street? The protagonist explained with a smile that they had an ally who could help, and that was the bride. Since the marriage was concluded with a ghost, she herself was probably a victim and wanted to help them. Sho wondered if the bride was a ghost. If they wanted to, then they could go for it, but he would stay. John got up from the floor and said that he was coming with him. Qinglin thought with a serious face that he was too decisive. He was obviously hiding something from them. She said that she was coming with them. Old man Yuquan noted that he should go too. MC helped him up and said that he had better rest for a while. Stella excitedly grabbed Sho and said that she would be with him. The protagonist approached him and told him to take care of them. They would be back soon. Tell him to call for help if something happened. After that, the three of them went inside the building. Opening the door, they saw strange paper people in front of them. John shouted in fear that things were bad. Why were there strange figures in the bridal room? The protagonist replied that otherwise the wedding would not be called ghostly. He approached the bride herself and said that they were random travelers who were caught up in the celebration. Does she want to run away with them? Does she agree to help them? MC, noticing that she was ignoring him, took off her wedding veil and, seeing that it was a paper figure, shouted in bewilderment, saying, "Are they really all just figures? But then where is the bride?" Stella wondered, was he really so sure that she existed? He was obviously a newbie, but how did this guy know something that other players did not? The protagonist has a system window with a task. He needs to save the bride, Ling. The reward was 3,000 achievement points. He thought that this was a person's name. Why would he save paper figures? But where was she? Qinglin said that they needed to see if there was some kind of mechanism in the room. She began to examine the room and after a while noticed that the middle of the bed was empty. MC thought that when the old man was poisoned, she was the first to understand what was going on. She was a smart, brave, and skillful girl. She was not that simple. Suddenly, John grabbed the paper figure of the bride and threw it on the floor. The three of them lifted the bed, found the basement, and armed with candles, went down. Qinglin noted that there was only one road. The protagonist replied that they had no other way. They began to move forward, when suddenly John noticed a paper hand and was very scared. The girl picked it up and noted that the hand was not real, just like those paper figures. There are 6 body parts. They should match those on the ground. John asked with displeasure why all the figures were torn to shreds. MC answered with a serious face that no. Don't they think these figures look like them? In ancient times, there was a custom according to which a bride from a wealthy family was accompanied by a dowry upon marriage. It included not only jewelry and paintings, but also people. And the 6 of them are the dowry at this ghostly wedding. The bride is not real, the bridal room is fake, not to mention the dowry. If his thoughts are correct, the real room is downstairs, and these figures hint at their future. There is no time to think. They need to go. They need to quickly find the bride, otherwise the remaining 3 will be in trouble. They quickly ran through the tunnel, when suddenly John noticed that there was something there. A moment later, they found themselves in front of a mysterious door. The protagonist opened the door and said that the bride was there. They went inside and saw the bride lying in front of them. Qinglin took off her scarf and noticed that she was alive. She was still breathing, but it seemed that she was unconscious. The protagonist asked if they could wake her up. The girl replied that she was not sure. She could not even imagine how to help her. MC called out to John and asked him to help her up. After a while, they pulled the bride out, and the protagonist said that he should be careful and not hit her against anything. Suddenly, the others ran into the room, screaming for help. The protagonist excitedly asked what had happened. Yuquan explained in fear that the villagers were going to kill them. Stella added in horror that each of them was armed with hoes and sickles. They were attacking everyone they saw. That man was trying to stop them. The MC, with a serious face, told Qinglin to take the bride with them. He would go out and see what was happening outside. At this time, outside, Shou, using a ghost servant, warned that one more step and he would act. The mad villagers began to attack him, but the ghost servant began to fight them off. The protagonist, seeing this, wondered in bewilderment, was this some kind of special power in the game? Suddenly, the ghost servant himself attacked Shou in the back. The MC wondered, did he attack his master? How many scars are on his back? Is this really the price for the ghost power? A system window appeared stating that they congratulate the player on a full system analysis. Guide, Phantom Servant of Pain, fragment not selected. Have him unlock all 0 illustrated guides and get a reward. The protagonist, after reading this, noted that the Phantom Servant of Pain is a fragment of the Echo level. The ghost is born and exists thanks to pain. It enjoys torturing others, attacks with a long whip, and each attack deals fixed damage to the player. Stella, watching what was happening, admiringly noted how strong it is. MC explained that using the Phantom Servant is expensive. It will not last that long. The protagonist approached Yuquan and asked if he had inspected the yard after they entered the house. The old man excitedly agreed and added that there is a low wall on the west side that they can climb over. The protagonist shouted for them to all run to the west side. Suddenly, the wedding planner furiously shouted for them to stop them right now. The mad villagers began to attack them, but Qinglin deftly began to throw all the opponents. Everyone, seeing this, stood up in surprise. She said seriously, let them not stand like pillars. They need to run faster. After a while, they reached the western part of the wall. Shou asked what they should do now. He could not hold out any longer, because the ghost servant only had 3 hits left. MC took out a talisman and replied that they would have to resort to desperate measures. He, seeing this, wondered in surprise, where did he get it from? The protagonist began to use the talisman and said, let the 3 heavenly masters who owned this in the past burn the evil spirits walking at night. He orders the demons and monsters to run. The protagonist threw 3 talismans at the feet of the mad villagers, and everything suddenly burst into huge flames. Shou exclaimed in admiration, what a huge power. Does he have more? Let him use it. MC said that the talisman allows you to drive out demons. They are still human, right? So it will not affect them. He wondered what they should do then. The protagonist replied with a smile that they needed to stick to the original plan. They climbed over the fence and, once outside, began to wait for the mad villagers. After that, after killing a couple of people, they went into the barn. Qinglin noticed that the villagers were growing in number. They needed to run. John excitedly asked where they should go. MC thought that the banquet was ruined, the bride was saved, but the ceremony was not over yet. They missed something. Suddenly, the bride woke up. The protagonist approached her and asked if she was okay. Did she remember her name? The girl, confused, introduced herself and asked where she was and who they were. The protagonist replied with a smile that they were a bunch of losers who had gotten into a wedding ceremony. Does she know anything about the ghost marriage? Ling replied that she didn't know for sure. She had been captured a couple of days ago. She didn't know why she had been taken. The MC warned that if they didn't put an end to the ceremony, everyone would die, and she definitely wouldn't get a good ending. Does she really not remember anything? Ling remembered how the wedding planner had asked about the way to Nianyang Temple. The protagonist asked if there was a statue of the goddess of the underworld there. It seemed that he knew how to put an end to this ghost ceremony. John asked fearfully, was he crazy? This place was just crawling with ghosts. The protagonist took out another talisman and replied that he shouldn't worry, because he already had a solution. It was an invisibility talisman that hides the body, transforms it, making it invisible and inaudible. Effect grants invisibility to everyone within a radius of 5 meters for the duration of the incense sticks. If they touch anyone during the use of the spell, they will immediately become visible, so let them be careful. After that, they ran out of the barn. MC noticed that they only had 3 sticks, so they needed to speed up. After a while, they got close to a large house. John, hiding behind the trees, said with a smile that they really couldn't see them. The protagonist responded angrily, "Let him shut his mouth." They entered the ancestral hall and closed the door. Qinglin reported that there was a path leading to the top of the mountain behind the hall. The protagonist replied that they should go then. Suddenly, he noticed a book called Village Chronicles in the middle of the room. He took it and began to read, saying that in the 17th year of the reign of Emperor Long, a black torrential rain covered the land. In the same year, a great famine came. People began to devour each other, and evil spirits descended to the earth. After a while, they went to the top of the mountain. MC gave Ling his hand and told her to hold on to it. By the way, does she know what the black rain mentioned in the Village Chronicles was? The girl replied that no one could answer for sure. There were so many rumors. They said that the emperor was angry and killed even the most honorable of officials. The heavens became angry, and black rain fell from the sky. She heard that there was the same rain in Guangzhou. But John interrupted her and started to joke around, saying that they didn't expect the mountain to be teeming with monsters and ghosts, right? Qinglin irritably hit him on the head and told him to stop talking nonsense. MC, seeing the shadow of the temple, thought that according to the chronicles, it was the temple that protected the village from the black rain, but all the villagers became monsters. Suddenly, Shou stopped them and excitedly noted that they were there. In front of them was a huge, powerful temple. Everyone was shocked by the dark aura hovering around this place. He shouted angrily that they should leave as soon as possible. Suddenly, a silhouette of a person appeared near the gate. It was Emperor Long himself. He said with a furious smile that since they dared to come here, they would not return back. Shou fearfully summoned a ghost servant and tried to strike, but the emperor grabbed the spirit and asked, "Is this an exorcism? Is he from the reincarnation sect?" He shouted that he had no idea what he was talking about. Long smiled and pointed out that this was a wild ghost. He would not be polite to him. Suddenly, he used his skill and absorbed the ghost servant. MC, watching what was happening, shouted in fear. Could he really subjugate a ghost servant with one move? Long began to suck the ghost servant into his vessel. Shou, sitting on his knees, grabbed his head. Then the emperor closed the lid of the vessel and said that this is excellent. It is very rare to take such a spirit for himself. May his ghost mother bless him. The next second, Shou fell to the ground, and the emperor, smiling madly, turned his head and said, "Judging by her outfit, is she the bride at today's wedding?" Ling, sitting on the ground, looked at him in fear, and then put her hands in front of her and screamed at him not to come and touch her. "Don't," he thoughtfully said. "Snow-white skin, bones like jade. These idiots have found the perfect bride. The ghost mother will be happy." The next second, the protagonist put his hand to his side and asked, "Why would the goddess of the underworld need a bride?" He turned to him and asked, "How dare he interrupt him, little one? Does he want to die?" The protagonist gritted his teeth and thought, he shouldn't be afraid. He should stall for time. He pointed at himself and added, "But they, who are accompanying the bride, don't have much time left anyway, right?" He smirked and said, "How interesting, what strange clothes he is wearing." Then he put his hand on his shoulder and said, he still dares to snap at him, knowing that his death is imminent. "Who does he think he is, boy?" Then the MC reached into his pants pocket and with an awkward smile said that he was just a wandering traveler. According to tradition, if they do not know the cause of death, they become wandering spirits after death. That's why he dared to ask. The emperor then looked at the spirit in his hand and asked, "Does that mean he doesn't want to become a spirit? He wants to know more about the wedding?" The protagonist turned around, and then the emperor clenched his fist with the spirit in his hand and said that he was lucky he was in a good mood today, so he would tell. Of course, it was not the mother who needed this marriage. A ghost wedding, during which the bride marries Vajrasada. As for them, they were part of the sacrificial ritual. He pointed the flag with the symbol at them and said, they should not worry. He would make sure that not even a wandering spirit remained from them. The next second, several spirits rushed straight towards them. And then the emperor turned around in surprise, seeing powerful rays of light, and asked what was going on. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw the spirit of a huge tiger. The protagonist held a statue in his hands and walked forward. John fell to the ground in relief and said that he thought he was going to die. Buddy, he saved him again. The protagonist held a white tiger in his hands, restoring spiritual power to 85%. Turning around, he shouted at them to leave here as soon as possible. Blocking one attack consumes 15% of spiritual power. They need to buy some time. Then Qinglin waved her hand and said that they should go. They will not interfere with him. Long, perplexed, thought, a spiritual transformation artifact? This is a mid-grade weapon. but he did not feel any spiritual power from this guy. How is this possible? Then he pointed the flag at him and shouted, "Who is he really?" The protagonist spread his arms out to the sides and smiled and said he was just a wanderer. Can they continue to chat and not fight? He shouted back, "Idiot, how dare he?" He concentrated his energy and sent it forward. The powerful energy met with the white tiger, and he said, "Ghost flame." But MC and the tiger spirit were standing in the barrier. The ghost flame crashed into the barrier, unable to go further. The emperor bowed his head and smiled madly, saying it was in vain that he relied on his weapon. When he ran out of spiritual energy, he would skin him and tear him apart alive. The protagonist frowned and thought, damn, he was caught. The next second, the flames started to hit him, and he ran in the opposite direction. The emperor asked, "What's wrong? Is he not being sarcastic anymore, brat?" The protagonist knelt down on one knee, holding the ground, and thought, if he continues to stupidly dodge, nothing will come of it. He needs to seize the initiative. After that, he waved his hand and shouted, "White tiger." The spirit rushed to attack and raised a huge paw right above the emperor, but he managed to create a barrier and asked, does he think he can't predict his actions? Without the support of spiritual power, relying only on weapons, he will not be able to break through the soul banner. He put his hand forward and said that after his death, he would use the ghost fire of the vengeful spirits and improve this magic weapon. After that, he clenched his fist, but Qinglin threw several talismans at him, and he turned to her, sighed, and asked, does she still want to die? The next moment, his barriers began to crack. He saw a tiger pressing its paws on his barrier, and, spreading his arms to the sides, perplexed, he shouted, "What is happening?" The protagonist gave a command to Qinglin, and she threw the talismans forward again. An explosion occurred, and then the emperor jumped to the side and asked, "What did they do?" MC sighed and said, it seems his spiritual energy was exhausted earlier. He replied that it was impossible. As long as the mother statue, before he could finish speaking, the protagonist raised his index finger and continued. As long as the ghost mother statue of the ghost is intact, the spiritual power cannot. The emperor continued for him. Be exhausted? In the 12th year of Emperor Long's reign, a sudden mountain flood caused the loss of the mother's statue. The search lasted for 3 months, but all was in vain, and the poor villagers were flogged 30 times. But after the statue was returned, a great famine came. The villagers died one after another. The protagonist looked at the book and said, so the only punishment was whipping? But before, people were simply killed. With these words, he slammed the book shut. And at that moment, Yuquan ran out of the building, clutching the statues in his hands. He shouted that he took. The emperor shouted angrily, and then ran to attack. But the protagonist and the white tiger stood in front of him. He asked, but where was he going? He stopped and, pointing his finger at him, said, so he was just trying to distract him from the beginning? He replied, exactly. They planned every step. Villains should not keep diaries and reveal their plans. It's too easy to find out their weaknesses. After that, he threw the book and John, stretching his hand joints, and said how he had been waiting for this. The protagonist sat down near the statue and thought, the statue of the ghost mother. He stretched out his hand to it, and the system reported that the mission was completed. The ghost wedding is over. Congratulations on completing the game. Please? He must wait. Calculating additional rewards. Yuquan, stretching out his hand to the statue, asked, the system says the game is over? Is this really true? MC leaned over and took his hand, confirming it. He also saw the notification. It's over. Then they turned to Stella, who clutched her chest and cried loudly. John adjusted the cap on his head and shouted, why is she crying? No one is injured or dead. What bad luck? Qinglin hugged the girl and looked at him angrily. He raised his hands in fear, and then the protagonist turned his attention to Shou, who was still lying on the ground, and asked how he was feeling. Qinglin replied that his vital signs were stable, he just lost consciousness. He added, the game was over. He didn't know how long they would be here. She raised her index finger and added, the estimated time was between 5 and 15 minutes. Then the surviving players would be teleported to the starting area. He looked at her and turned around abruptly, asking, how did she know this? She spread her arms out to the sides and replied, he wasn't the only one keeping secrets from others. She then walked up to Ling and asked, did she have a plan? What was she going to do? She turned around in confusion and asked, were they really leaving? The next second, their gaze turned to the depths of the forest, and several riders appeared from the rising cloud of dust. One of them stopped near the players, and Ling said, benefactors. She asks them to stop. These are people from her family. Is she okay? Did they come on her father's orders? Zheng Wei got off his horse and bowed, putting his hand to his chest, saying, Wei of the Leopard Cavalry greets the young lady. He apologizes for not making it in time. He deserves to die. The protagonist, looking at this, sighed and said, it seems they really don't need to worry about what will happen to her. The next second, his hand began to dissolve, and he looked at it in bewilderment. Qinglin, who also began to dissolve, turning to Ling, noted that it was time for them to say goodbye, and at this point they parted ways. The next second, several pillars of bright light rushed into the sky, and Wei said there was no trace of them left. "Madam, who are these people?" She replied that she did not even have time to find out their names. The system reported that the game is over. The rewards are being counted. Achievement points 14,500. Number of completed missions 4 out of 4. Special missions 3 completed. Purchase per mission 200%. Purchase of special items in the store is unlocked. Special reward for completing hidden missions 1 beacon. The protagonist, looking thoughtfully at the system window, said, "The store remains open until the next task. He can study everything more carefully." Then he thought, all the missions are completed, and the reward is only 14,500 points. This does not even cover the cost of the items used. If you only do the main missions, then you need several games to exchange points for one thing in the store. It is understandable why he did not intervene. Then he waved his hand and added, "But his situation is different. He does not lack points, but goods from the store." The system asked if he wants to return to the real world. He confirmed his choice, and the next second he found himself in his room. He patted his body and noticed that he was back where he started. He looked at the wall clock and said, "Only a few minutes have passed." And then everything swam before his eyes again, and he, clutching his head, said that it was splitting. What was happening to him? After that, he lay down on the bed and said that he needed to sleep for a while. He would deal with everything else tomorrow. When the morning came, he got up from his bed and walked to the door and said, "Who is here at such an early hour?" After that, he turned the doorknob, and Qinglin was standing at the threshold. When she saw him, she asked, "Mr. Guyun?" She represents the Human Security Bureau. They are asking for his cooperation in investigating some cases. He thought in surprise, "Human Security Bureau? That was the name of the old organization, wasn't it?" Then he asked, "So she didn't just appear in the game for no reason? And she didn't even come here for nothing? How did her organization get his address?" She folded her arms and replied, "Original Sin randomly selects players. Their meeting was just a coincidence." She looked to the side and added, "As for the second question, if he cooperates with them, he will get answers to everything." At that moment, there was a gunman standing behind the wall, and the protagonist, trembling all over, asked in fear, "The matter she said was not related to killing people or experimenting on him?" She replied, "Every player is very valuable. Of course it is not. As long as he cooperates with them, they will not threaten his personal safety." He pointed his finger at the gun sticking out from behind the wall and asked, "What is this then?" She approached his face and replied, "As long as he cooperates with them, they will not threaten his personal safety." Then she snapped her fingers, and the man pulled the bolt. MC, sweating, raised his hands and said, "Okay, he understands. He agrees to cooperate with them." Then he reached for a stain on his jacket and said, "But maybe they can give him time to at least change?" Qinglin looked at the watch on her hand and said that they were leaving in 15 minutes. After a while, she was driving a car, and when the protagonist approached her, she told him to get in the car. After that, they set off, and she said yesterday's mission was classified as the most difficult, and the reason they survived was because of him. She is truly grateful to him, but the organization did not find him yesterday. To be more precise, she is talking about his identity. Only her level of clearance can reveal the information. After that, she pressed the gas pedal, and the car quickly moved forward. After a while, they arrived at the right place, and she announced it. At that moment, a man in a bulletproof vest approached them and asked her to provide her ID. She handed him the card, and he scanned it with a special device. The device said, "Human Security Bureau, Special Operations Squad, Ji Qinglin Group Leaders." He pointed his hand forward and said, "Leader, welcome to headquarters." She agreed and thanked him. After some time, they were sitting in the conference room, and Qinglin poured a glass of water, walked over and put it on the table where MC was sitting. He looked at her and asked, "But why did she drag him here?" She replied that he would understand everything himself soon. At this moment, Professor Bai entered the room and, turning to Goyun, noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. How was he doing? He stood up in surprise, leaning his hands on the table and asked, "Uncle Bai, what is he doing here?" Professor Bai, a famous folklorist, historian, and archaeologist, an important employee, smiled, spread his arms out to the sides and replied, "He is doing research, of course. He is the same player as he is. However, age takes its toll." Qinglin explained that Professor Bai is the main and most important member of the organization's research team, as well as one of the honorary deputy directors of the Bureau. He said, "No need. If it were not for the disappearance of Fen Miang and his wife, the position would not have passed to him." The protagonist ran up to him, put his hand on his chest and asked, "Lin Fen Miang? Did his parents work in the Bureau too?" He looked at him and replied, "It seems he really doesn't know anything at all." Professor Fen Miang and Zhang Hongli are considered the founders and elders of the Security Bureau. They were the first to discover the anomalies and predict the emergence of original sin, but unfortunately, heaven always takes the best. MC pulled himself up to his robe and asked, "So his parents didn't die in a car accident? What happened to them? Are they alive?" He looked away and answered, "Indeed." At that moment, Qinglin stood between them and turning to the professor said that he has no right to say this, the information is classified. He replied that he understands, and the protagonist, putting his hand on his chest, perplexed, asked, "Why? He can't find out the details about his parents?" She replied that he will have to sign an agreement and become a member of the organization. After that, she handed him a folder with a document and added that she wanted him to understand one thing. Signing the contract meant that he would become part of the battle against the distortions. He would face strangeness, madness, and maybe death. He looked at the documents and said that it said that they do not intentionally send people on a mission from which they cannot return. She replied that, as she said before, every player is important. They will not sacrifice anyone intentionally unless that sacrifice helps save more lives. After that, the protagonist signed the document and said that in that case, he will definitely find out the whole truth. Meanwhile, the man was watching the events from the big screen and asked what he thought of this guy. Xu Jingyan, frowning, looked at the screen and replied that he was impulsive, self-confident, hot-tempered, and arrogant. He asked, "Isn't that great?" And he walked to the door and turned on the light and asked, "Why is it so dark?" He replied that everyone had different responsibilities. He was responsible for doubt, and he was responsible for faith. Meanwhile, the professor clutched the documents and said that he would become one of them once he signed the contract. He still had 2 projects. Qinglin would be teaching him. After that, the door closed behind him, and they sat down at the table. The protagonist looked at her and said uncertainly, "So?" She stood in front of him and said, "Qinglin, former head of the Special Analysis Team of the Human Security Bureau, currently the head of the 2nd Special Operations Team." They shook hands, and he awkwardly scratched the back of his head, replied that he. But before he could finish speaking, she said, "Lin Goyun, 20 years old, unemployed, son of the founder of the organization, dropped out of the department of his university, not in a romantic relationship." Then she sat down on the chair and said, "As he can understand, they know a lot about him regarding the Bureau. They are the official organization that handles the investigation of all abnormal incidents, including the original sin." He frowned and asked, "Including? Are there other abnormal incidents?" She replied that there were more than he thought. He could look for himself. After that, she handed him a file folder with a document, and he took out a piece of paper that said, 1980, Dragonfall Incident, 1930, Ghost Market, 1943, Ascension Banquet, 1950, Ghost Incident, 1965, Heavenly Eye Prodigy, 1962, Cat-Faced Lady. The abnormal incidents in the past were literally spewing flames in mysterious caves. They could not be allowed to happen again. But now the monsters from the cave crawled out. One of them is related to the original sin. The protagonist asked, "Did the other anomalies disappear with the game?" She answered, "Not really. According to his father's research, all of these became like small worlds. It works the same way as black holes. When a very large anomaly appears, all the others are absorbed." She walked to the wall and added, "Now working with the original sin and derivative incidents is the main task of their work." After that, she pressed the button, and the MC asked in surprise, "What is this?" The next second, a board descended on the wall behind her, and, starting to take notes, she explained that there are 2 categories of derivative incidents. The first is out-of-control players. They accidentally gain incredible power, and some of them start doing evil. They monitor and limit such people. He asked, "And the second one?" She answered, "The second type of derivative incidents is a dungeon." The term does not refer to the dungeons of their missions in the game, but rather to those that manifested in reality. The protagonist, clutching the documents, asked, "Can this appear here?" She pointed to the side and asked, "Does he remember what was written on the official website? Failure of the mission will have serious consequences." He said, "So." She said, "When all the players are eliminated, the mission is considered failed, and then a dungeon will materialize in the real world. This is the second type of tasks they need to cope with." The protagonist thought, "So, this is what a failed mission threatens. Why hadn't he heard about this before?" She took the suitcase in her hand and told him not to worry. Usually dungeons are dealt with by veterans of past games. He should take it. This is his introductory baggage. She handed it to the protagonist, and he opened the suitcase and was surprised to see a gun. She picked it up and, loading it, aimed it at the wall and said that he also had a license for this, and she would teach him how to use it later. Then she threw it to the protagonist and said that this was not given out for free, only to trusted people. If he abused his position, the Bureau could easily get rid of him. Then, she threw him a phone that supported a satellite signal. All tasks and communications from the organization would be sent to this. Then she picked up a watch and explained that the watch had a special detector built into it. When something unusual was detected, an indicator would light up. There were 6 indicator colors in total: green, blue, purple, orange, red, and white. The lower the scale, the more dangerous the situation. At that moment, there was a knock on the door and they turned around. Jingyan entered the room and Qinglin was surprised. "Deputy, why is he here?" He asked in response, "How long will the training last?" He was the deputy director of the bureau, responsible for leading the special operations group to combat emergency situations. She replied that the main points had already been studied. All that was left was to go to the shooting range for training. He held the documents in his hand and said that it could wait. Now she had an urgent task. After that, he handed her the documents, which stated the mission code: a cabin in the forest. Mission type: uncontrolled dungeon. Danger level: night rank. She, surprised, asked, "A dungeon?" She slammed her hands on the table and added, "But deputy, he has only completed 1 mission." He folded his arms across his chest, looked at the protagonist and said, "No buts, this is a mission. He either accepts it or rejects it." The protagonist asked if he could find out what the consequences of refusal were. He answered, "Nothing special, just the document he signed will be cancelled. His memories of the bureau will be erased, he will be sent back to where he came from." He wondered, what about the entrance test? A show of force? To hell with it, he needed to know more about his parents. After that, he stood up from his seat and declared that he accepted the task. The deputy chief, heading for the door, turned to him and said that it was wonderful. He would get more specific information from the analytics department. He soon slammed the door behind him. Then they started discussing, and MC said that he felt like the deputy chief was being wary of him. Qinglin said, "Basically, the bureau usually doesn't hire players who have only completed the game once because they are mentally unstable, and the likelihood of them dying in subsequent games is high." It is said that Professor Bai and the other staff collected his resume for the chief overnight, and his deputy is a man of rules. The protagonist then slammed his fingers on the table and said, "I see, so they treat him as if he got here through connections. It seems that he has become a burden to her." She shook her head and replied that he thinks too much, and it is his duty to complete this task. She demonstrated the device in her ear and told him to put on the headset. The intelligence team would contact him through it. This task should not be taken lightly. Containing a dungeon is usually not a task that a newbie who has only completed the game once can handle. He stretched his joints and added, "But the contract also said that you don't go to your death on purpose, right?" That deputy chief really did rule. She headed for the exit, and after a while, she got behind the wheel of the car and told him to get in. She repeated that he should put on the headset. After that, she said, "She is Qinglin, requesting additional analysis of the cabin in the forest." She received a response through the headset. "The application is already under review, connecting to the private network, connecting to the intelligence department. An auxiliary representative is on the line. An auxiliary representative of Iris is on site. She will provide them with information support." The cabin in the forest appeared 36 hours ago. The scale of the pollution is 1,200 square meters. The area is currently blocked off. At the moment, there are 3 people in the temporary team. The team leader is Li Shuyang, group member Ji Qinglin, and Lin Goyun. That's all the information about the incident in the cabin in the forest. Are there any questions? She replied, "None." The MC said, "So the team leader of this quest will be a veteran." It seems that the deputy was just planning to test whether he had the courage to take on this quest. Qinglin frowned and said, "Shuyang, she advises him not to expect too much from him." He was surprised. "Why?" She replied that he would know when he saw him. After a while, they arrived at the scene. Shuyang, kneeling, emptied the contents of his stomach into a bucket, and the protagonist, covering his nose, asked, "Is this a veteran?" Li Shuyang, 29, a disciple who abandoned the Heavenly Master's palace and has completed the game 5 times. He is a lifelong alcoholic and his completion rate is extremely low. Qinglin frowned and asked if he knew now why she said he was unreliable. She then asked him to give her a bucket of water, ice-cold water. The military replied, "Yes." After that, she poured the contents of the bucket onto Shuyang's face, and he jumped up in surprise and asked, "What's the matter?" "Is it raining?" She looked at him seriously and said that they were on a mission. He asked, "Is that voice a bluebird?" He then lay down on the ground again and turned around and said, "He must be dreaming, otherwise how could he have seen the bluebird?" Qinglin irritably put her hand to the bridge of her nose and ordered them to pour it on him a few more times. If he still didn't come to his senses, they should call a few people and take him away from here. They should follow her to the scene. The military man said, "Okay." After that, they walked forward and MC asked, "Did he just call her Blue what?" She answered, "Bluebird." That was her former code name in the Information Reconnaissance Squad. She put her finger on the headset and Iris said, "Qinglin's sister used to be their captain." Then the military man pointed his finger forward. A huge castle appeared in front of them, and the protagonist thought in surprise, "Darkness? Anomaly? It's not. Is this a feeling of imbalance?" It looks like a fragment of reality has been squeezed in, so this is the dungeon that has gotten out of control. Then his watch lit up and he was surprised. An alert? Could it be that the anomaly escaped from the dungeon? Qinglin frowned and replied that it was not an anomaly, but a distortion. She raised her index finger and told everyone to put on protective suits. She had to locate them to find out if the distortion was spreading. The protagonist asked, "What is a distortion? Do they need to put on some kind of equipment?" She replied that they didn't need it. She should have taught him this after using a gun, but after real experience, he would figure it out on his own. Anomaly is a general term for all kinds of supernatural things. Monsters, terrain, rules. And distortion is an abnormal appendage, something like a virus or radiation. They infect ordinary people, distorting them and turning them into monsters. A protective suit can slow down the speed at which it spreads to people. The protagonist thought, since anomalies distort ordinary people, so why don't they need a protective suit? Wait a minute, ordinary people? He asked. Don't they need it just because they are players? Qinglin folded her arms and replied that it was true. After all, they had long been subjected to the largest abnormal distortion. Then Iris said, after comparative calculations, the target's distortion radius had increased by 50 meters in 2 hours. There was a tendency for further spread. Qinglin said, the distortion scale was growing rapidly, which meant the danger level had also become higher. How long would it take to quickly mobilize resources? She replied that it was already too late. There were no special operation personnel left in the city on standby. The village was 800 meters away. Qinglin thoughtfully put her hand to her chin and frowned, telling her to prioritize the evacuation, then apply for support. MC put his hand on her shoulder and gave her a thumbs up, telling her not to worry. He thought he could save the day. He threw Shiyang's arm over his shoulder, supporting him. Qinglin walked closer to the distortion and turned around and said, the cabin in the forest is classified as a night level, indicating that there is at least one or more supernatural phenomena or rules. You shouldn't take it lightly. Their goal is to conduct an investigation. They need to be prepared and evacuate at any time when danger comes. She opened the door and walked inside, adding, so they should try to work together and not split up. The next second, she turned around in surprise, and the protagonist put his hand on the headset, perplexed, said, Iris. Qinglin disappeared before their eyes. What the hell is going on there? She replied that her position was lost. She couldn't contact her. He looked at the screen of his phone and added, not to mention the special satellite positioning. Is there any signal? Shuyang walked away from him and said, there was when they were on the ground. She was dragged to another place. Obviously, it would be impossible to contact her. Then he poured the contents of the bottle into his mouth and added, she mentioned the problem with space when they sent out the advanced team before Iris. The advanced team actually encountered the phenomenon of spatial folding. The length of the corridor exceeded the actual length of the building, and after opening the door, the situation became chaotic. But before this, there had never been a situation and forced movement in space. There were changes in the rules in the dungeon, and the reconnaissance team recommended abandoning the operation and waiting for reinforcements. Shiyang smirked and said, the rules of space are the most unpleasant thing. Well, does he want to give up? MC took a deep breath and then exhaled and asked for a minute. He mentally asked the system to open a store to exchange the reward. At this time, Qinglin tried to contact Iris and said that she asked for a response as soon as she received this message. Her phone screen showed that there was currently no signal. She noted that the signal was gone, which meant that she would not be able to contact her. Apparently, she was in trouble. Qinglin noticed, looking at the exits, that it turned out that she needed to get out of here on her own. She decided to quickly leave the room through the entrance opening, but suddenly appeared again in the place from which she made her dash. Qinglin looked around and asked in bewilderment, is this really a spatial fold? After which she tried to leave the museum in different ways, even backwards, but she did not succeed. Qinglin grabbed her head with her hand and noted that she had already tried to get out of here in different ways, but she constantly returned to the same place. She looked at the corridor and said that if she could not leave here, then she would have to continue her exploration from the inside herself. After a while, in another space, Shuyang asked if he was really going to enter it. The protagonist chuckled and said that he was naturally going to. They both entered the museum exploration path at the same time. Afterwards, the protagonist asked Iris that he was asking her to repeat the information about the dungeon clue. Iris said that the advance party had received 3 clues at the moment. The first clue was that the art museum was run by a family of 3. Some of the party had received spiritual visions and they saw their life picture. The second clue was that each statue contained remains, indicating that there were a large number of people killed. The third clue was that the advance party had encountered a wandering killer. Firearms had little effect on him. MC thought that this made it clear that he was the core of the mutation. Suddenly, a ghost of a girl appeared behind them, and she said that they had finally come here. They were surprised by her appearance and turned around in fear. She watched them closely and then looked at Goyun intently. The girl's ghost said that they should follow her. Shiyang asked what they would do. The protagonist said that they would follow her. After a while, they watched her, and the protagonist noted that he was a Taoist. Shouldn't he understand such things? He happily stated that there were no ghosts in this world. He was a convinced materialist. MC pointed to the ghost and noted that he could tell her this directly. Suyang then touched the picture and noted that it was an anomaly that was related to a powerful distortion, only it manifested itself in the form of a ghost. Iris reported that according to data, anomalies often manifested themselves in the form of legends or monsters from classical literature. Nowadays, it is believed that people's thoughts influence their creation. Guyan scratched his head and asked, what was the difference anyway? He noted that it was like someone being killed by lightning. In ancient times, it would have been thought that the lightning had punished him for his bad deeds, but now it is believed that it was because he was under a tall tree during a heavy rain. In the first case, it is superstition, and in the second case, it is science. The protagonist thoughtfully asked what she wanted by calling him to this painting. The protagonist thought, looking closely at the painting, was she really asking for help? Shiyang shouted, pointing his index finger at the ghost of the girl, that he should look there, after which they ran towards where she was. MC noticed, having studied the painting, that she was warning them to be careful with their father. At this time, a statue appeared behind them, swinging its weapon to strike them. At the last moment, they jumped in different directions, dodging the enemy's blow. They used their items to damage the opponent. During the deafening explosion, Shuyang asked, did he really use talismans? So he is also a Taoist? Goyun asked, what is he talking about? Isn't he a materialist? He pointed out with an awkward smile that he suffers from occupational deformation. The protagonist stared in surprise at the stone fragments that belonged to the destroyed statue. Suddenly they moved, and the protagonist shouted that their fight is not over yet. At this time, the statue was being restored and then pounced on them who were trying to escape from this creature. MC shouted that they need to run away quickly. After a while, in a spatial fold, Qinglin carefully examined the corridor, lighting her way with a flashlight from her phone. She thought, how far had she already walked? It felt like over 500 meters already. Is this space distorted, expanded, or circulating somewhere? Qinglin asked, seeing the silhouette of a person in front of her. Who is he? Yizhang asked in surprise. Did she really run into someone again? She didn't know the drunkard Taoist, did she? She asked, had she really met someone like that? Was he alone? She said that he was with a handsome guy. They seemed to say that they were looking for their ally. Were they talking about her? Qinglin pointed out that she understood correctly. These were her allies. And who was she? She thought that the advance team had sealed off the area in the forest as soon as the dungeon appeared here. No civilians could enter here. Because of this, questions were raised about this girl. Yizhang said that she was a streamer and was broadcasting here about the supernatural. Qinglin asked, what was she talking about? She introduced herself charmingly and said with a smile that she was super cute. Yizhang, didn't she hear about her? She said that she hadn't heard of her. Yizhang asked sadly, did she really not use the internet at all? She was so popular. Afterwards, she said that not only had she not found anything, but she had also been warned that she had entered a forbidden area. She was leaving. Let her find her allies herself. Qinglin said that she had to stop. If she wanted to leave through the main entrance, she would not be able to. Yizhang asked in fear, what did she mean? What do you mean she would not be able to leave? She said that a spatial fold had appeared here, so if this problem was not solved, the people who entered would never be able to leave. She shouted, running towards the exit, that she did not believe it. She was just trying to scare her. After she appeared back in the room, she looked dumbfounded. Qinglin crossed her arms and asked, does she understand now? Yizhang asked in fear, how is this possible? What happened? She said in horror, crouching on the floor, that there was no way out. She asked where she ran into her allies. She needed to meet them. She said it was in the studio behind the corridor. After a while, Yizhang said in fear that it was an aquarium from which there was no escape. It was just like that story. Qinglin asked what she was talking about. Her face changed and noted that there was a story about a killer ghost from an art museum. The legend says that the owner of this museum once went crazy, killed his entire family, and then disappeared. After that, people who entered the museum were forever lost and could not find the exit, until they met that crazy father, which is why they became new victims. She asked if there was anything else she could tell. Yizhang held her hand with a creepy smile, and then made a surprised face. Qinglin noted that she did not tell at all about the man who was killed by his father and became a ghost who was constantly looking for the culprit of this incident. Is she right? Then she used her ability to inflict electrical damage. Yizhang screamed in pain and then turned into the ghost of the museum owner's daughter. She screamed when she found out about this. Qinglin prepared herself for battle and said that she knew it from the start. Her acting skills are terrible. They are in the same space, so there is no way she could meet her allies, unless she knew about everything that was happening here. Then she dealt a series of blows to the ghost of her daughter. She screamed that she would regret this. Her father would come for her. There was a terrible noise, and Qinglin covered her ears with her hands. Then she opened her eyes and asked, did she really escape? Qinglin thought she heard heavy footsteps and the sound of a heavy object growling. Could this be the father from the story? At this time, the protagonist and Shiyang were breathing heavily and hiding. Afterwards, Shiyang noted that it seemed quiet. The protagonist said that he was right. He said that now he felt like he had seen a scene like this in a horror movie many times. Two characters thought they had escaped, and just when they were breathing a sigh of relief, a killer appeared and said he found them. And then he killed the characters, and that was the end of the story. MC sighed heavily and said, looking out into the hallway, that the father's statue was indeed missing. They had no time to waste. Then Shiyang asked, why is he in such a hurry? He should wait for him. Guyun said that he was in a hurry to investigate. They smashed the statue a total of 11 times, of which they smashed it 3 times with the money sword, 7 times with magic talismans, and 1 time with a combination. The thing is, even using different attack methods, the statue's recovery time was the same. He asked in shock, was he also watching all this? Protagonist noticed that the statue was resurrecting too perfectly, so much so that it did not correspond to its own combat power. So he decided to carefully observe the process of resurrecting the statue. After that, he noticed that with each resurrection, energy from the outside entered the statue. Shuyang asked in confusion, how did he notice this? The protagonist said that he just knows how to observe. After a while, MC used his skill, Yin Pupils. The system window reported that the skill, Yin Pupils, has a class, Gifted Ability. Conversion price, 150,000 achievement points. Effect, improved visual acuity. The appearance of an additional field of vision in which things outside the surrounding world appear. Note, when acquiring heavenly eyes, open your pupils and look at the Yang Soul. Depending on the misfortune, observers die early. Guyun stated that they needed to go to the 3rd room on the 2nd floor. That's where the energy for resurrecting the statue appeared. After a while, they entered the room. Shiyang asked, why is it so cold here? What should they find here? The protagonist noted, using the skill Yin Pupils, that he was looking around. After the protagonist stated that he found it, they took the painting off the wall, and he asked, looking into the passage in the wall, what the hell is this? Could this be some kind of altar? MC noted that the pacifying talismans contain fire and explosions, so they are not suitable for such a small space. He must do something. Shiyang began to recite a mantra, let the evil spirits and unclean forces be punished. Step back, evil. Then he attacked the demonic mirror with his power. Shiyang asked in shock, what happened? Guyun thought, could this be a projection? However, where is the essence then? They heard a message on the special communication headset, and simultaneously shouted that it was Qinglin. After a while, Shuyang shouted while pointing his index finger there that he should look. Something appeared in the mirror. The mirror showed how the statue was preparing to fight against Qinglin. The protagonist contacted Iris and asked if she could contact Qinglin. Iris said that it was impossible. The signal transmission was difficult, and currently receiving information from her was only available one way. The protagonist stated while watching the battle in the mirror that they should find a way to contact her. At least, the essence of the altar is on her side. Shiyang noted that he actually had a way. In the dungeon, he obtained a skill called the Drunken Sleep Mechanism. However, this ability has a drawback. The MC asked what he was talking about. He said that in order to manifest the skill, he needs to drink strong wine and fall asleep. However, he has already run out of booze. Where can they find strong wine in such a short time? Guyun used the system store, and a system window appeared informing that the conversion price of the Drunken Immortal's wine is 1200 achievement points per jug. After the protagonist took out a new container, and the system window reported that the conversion price of the Emperor's Stream Pulp is 4000 achievement points per jug. Also, the decoction of precious liquid jade is 200 achievement points per jug. Shuyang swallowed nervously, seeing such a variety of drinks. The protagonist asked, is this amount enough for him? He happily shouted that it will be enough. This amount is enough for him to be on the verge of death 3 times. After Shuyang asked, does he want a technique that requires strong wine? MC said that he is categorically against it. However, he has a lot of achievement points. At this time, Qinglin thought, after dealing damage to the enemy, did he really recover again? Her attacks do not harm him at all? Afterwards, she thought, did she really hear Shiyang's voice? Where is he now? An incarnation of Shiyang appeared next to her, who said that they were in different spaces, and he had come to give her a solution to deal with this anomaly. She asked what she should do. Shiyang noted that the statue was an immortal body. No matter how much you destroy it, it's useless. To overcome this anomaly, you need to destroy the altar that feeds the statue with energy. This place is hidden behind the painting on the second floor in the third room on the left. Only in this space can you destroy it. Qinglin said that she understood everything. He said that the statue was almost restored. She needed to hurry. They ran to the altar. At this time, the protagonist nervously watched them through the mirror and wondered if they would succeed. Afterwards, the protagonist paid attention to the painting and decided to test his theory. MC noted that now he understood what was going on. After a while, Xiang shouted that it was here. Suddenly, the ghost of his daughter appeared from the door, screaming deafeningly. Qinglin covered her ears with her hands, and he rushed at the ghost, but the statue dealt him a crushing blow. After that, Xiang opened his eyes and asked, touching his head with his hand, "What was that?" After a while, Guyan said that everything was not so simple. If he had sobered up, then he should help him. He asked what he was doing. The anomaly had detained Qinglin. The protagonist said that he knew about it, so he was looking for another way. He should look at this painting. Xiang asked what he was talking about. The protagonist noted that he had found the original. The culprit was not the father, but the daughter. Addicted to dark rituals, she turned her own father into a monster. In the painting they had seen before, she did not ask for help, but lured passers-by into the museum. He remarked that he was no longer surprised that she had not let them into the room. What was he doing again? MC stated that he was looking for the essence of the statue. After she had been reborn as an evil spirit, her essence remained in the self-portrait. If they destroyed the painting, although they would not kill the ghosts, they could seriously injure her. She thought she was clever, separating them to break them one by one. However, at the same time, she could only be on one side. This would be the cause of her defeat. They began to destroy the paintings in the room, trying to find the essence of the ghost. At this time, in another space, Qinglin sighed heavily. The daughter's ghost shouted that she must die. Suddenly, she felt something strange, and she received serious damage. At the same time, the protagonist was destroying the painting in another space. Qinglin looked in surprise at the daughter's ghost and the statue, who began to disappear. After a while, the protagonist asked with a smile, so she decided to come here herself? They decided to teach her a lesson. They prepared for battle. After a while, they destroyed their opponents. Xiang asked if he could still fight. His spiritual power would soon run out. MC handed him an artifact and said that he should take it. He asked what it was. Xiang shouted in shock. Was this an average artifact? Where did he get such a good thing? Guyan said that it was an inheritance from his parents. They should be careful. It will soon recover again. The statue was recovering, and they prepared for battle. Then, unexpectedly, the statue collapsed. The protagonist happily noted that Qinglin must have done her part. At this time, she destroyed the mirror in her space. The ghost of his daughter shouted to the statue that he should get up already. Xuyang noted that he really died this time. Does she have any more tricks left? She looked around angrily and ran away from them. He shouted that she does not need to run away. Suddenly, the protagonist appeared in the path of the daughter's ghost and caught her in the artifact. Xuyang asked in surprise, did he really manage to catch her? MC said that he did. He noted that the anomaly was capable of creating distortions. According to the rules of the Bureau, you can't keep such things. Guyan offered 1 jug of drunken immortal wine. Xuyang said that there are rules. The protagonist offered 2 jugs for silence. After which the protagonist said that his final price was 2 jugs of immortal and 3 jugs of Emperor's Flow pulp, otherwise he would let this trait go. He said that they had a deal. The anomaly's soul was completely destroyed. They turned around at the noise and Qinglin asked, is this their hobby? They shouted that it was an accident. Just an accident. She contacted Iris and reported that the spatial anomaly had disappeared. What about the level of energy distortion? Iris reported that the distortion area and energy level have been rapidly reduced. Preliminary assessment. Incident resolved. Qinglin said that it was time for them to leave. They had completed the task, they needed to return and report. They looked at her with a smile, and then left the museum. After a while, Jinyan noted that Goyun had performed especially well in this task. Was there anything else he could add to his report? Shuyang stated that he was very strong, much stronger than players who had only completed the game once. Goyun had a sense of justice and was willing to take risks for the sake of ordinary people and his teammates. He is smart and observes everything carefully, so he has great potential. However, he also hides a lot. He asked, is this about his parents' legacy? He received his report. He thanks him for his hard work. He said with a smile that he was glad to help. It is for the sake of the Bureau. After a while, the protagonist yawned and went to the sink to wash his face. After which, he sat in a chair and took out an artifact, a white tiger. The protagonist thought until the spiritual embodiment of the tiger appeared, that it was true. Only 2 days have passed, considering his reality. Is this what he was told? It turns out that he can conclude that the original sin passes once a week. He has 5 days left. In addition, the deputy director of Jingyun said that he does not like it when he enjoys privileges, and now, most likely his attitude towards him has become too hostile. Or is this how he shows his caution? In addition, even his parents' personal affairs have been classified, so now everything is safe for cooperation. Suddenly, his phone rang. The phone screen showed that it was an unknown number. Feng Xingzi called out, introducing herself. This was Goyun, wasn't it? She was his assistant. She hoped they could get along. The MC was puzzled, asking what she was even talking about. She said that he only had a temporary assistant yesterday. A permanent one would be assigned later. Apparently, the previous assistant was a bluebird. Goyun asked, was she talking about Qinglin? Why didn't she call her by her name? Xingzi stretched in her chair and said that he didn't need to know that. However, the bureau often used code names during missions to ensure the safety of its employees. This is what they taught in class. The protagonist pointed out that he hadn't completed his training yet. She said that it was strange that he knew her real name. By the way, why didn't he have a code name? Wasn't his data in the system? The protagonist said that he himself didn't know that. Xingzi said that he should wait a bit. She would check it herself now. Then she said that she had succeeded. His codename was Ju Long. MC was shocked by this news. Xingzi said that this was strange. There were two people using this codename? This was too strange, and the other user was classified? She used the program to check the information and said that she had completed the check. Xingzi said that the other user of this codename was Feng Miang, and his status was deserter. Goyin shouted in shock. Was he really a deserter? Then she said that this was bad. Apparently the connection was cut off. He should wait, she would sort out the problem now, and then she would contact him again. The protagonist shouted that she should not hang up. What happened to the deserter? She must answer. The protagonist thought irritably, so he is suspected of desertion? Feng Yang was supposed to be an elder. However, if it was true, then he understood everything now. Suddenly, his phone rang, and he shouted when he answered that he was waiting for an explanation. Qinglin asked, what happened? MC asked in surprise, calling her name. Was it really her? She asked, so he was waiting for a call from another person? Goyun said that he just spoke with an assistant. Qinglin noted that she understood. She also wanted to say that his badge and all the training materials were ready and would be delivered by courier right to the door. After the protagonist ended the call with her and went to open the front door, the employee said, calling him Julong, that these were his things. He asks to check them. The protagonist took the box from him and exhaled. MC noted that he did not even have the strength to be angry. After a while, Guyan thought, sorting through the contents of the box, that Xingzi was not answering calls, so for now he was reading other information. Depending on the level of strength of the anomaly, they are divided into 7 levels. Reverberation level, where monsters slightly distorted by their energy cannot actively use their abilities, posing a great threat to ordinary people. Night level, where monsters with strong distorted energy can use at least one ability. Even with simple firepower, it is quite difficult to destroy them. Bishop level, where a monster that can use several abilities at the same time and carries a powerful distorted energy, capable of instantly injuring and easily killing thousands of ordinary people. Deity level, where a monster of the highest level has the ability to control at least one rule and cannot be defeated without bypassing this limitation. A monster that can shake the civilization system. The highest levels of disaster, extinction, and end of life are monsters that only exist in theory. The enemies will pose a serious threat to the survival of the entire world. The protagonist thought, putting his index finger to his chin, that the player's level corresponds to a certain level of the monster. So, for now, he is a silver level? The protagonist pointed out that the talisman and the statue were not so much abilities as they were just auxiliary things. He should learn something else to be on the safe side. He needed some ability. Then his phone rang, and the screen showed that it was Jingzi calling. She said that she had finally finished. She didn't expect it to be so difficult. MC asked if she had managed to find any information. Xingzi noted that she hadn't. Does he think she's tired of living? She only said a few words, and about 30 viruses immediately started blocking her. This is a real crisis for her. Fortunately, she's smart enough, otherwise she would have definitely been caught. In the end, she wonders if he knows who Feng Miang is. Goyan said that he was his father. Her face was distorted with horror at such information. Xingzi asked in confusion, did she really become a witness who would soon be disposed of? Guyan raised one finger and asked into the phone, is she his assistant? Xingzi tensely agreed and the protagonist sternly clarified, did she take the initiative to check the code name for him? Xingzi replied that it looked like it. MC raised 3 fingers and asked, did she read confidential documents and then escape punishment? Xingzi was stunned by his question. She burst into tears and screamed that it was over. She would definitely be considered an accomplice and expelled from the organization. Her internet fee, her permit, and her newest video card were all gone. Guyan smiled tensely and said that he thought she was worried about the wrong thing. He asked her not to worry and clarified that his father was merely suspected of desertion. They had nothing on him, so everything would be fine. Besides, no one knew about Xingzi looking for information except the two of them. He wouldn't tell anyone about this. She calmed down a bit and asked into the phone, "Is that true?" The protagonist confirmed it and added that he needed her help with something else. After all, friends should help each other. Xingzi asked sadly, "And how could she help?" MC replied smiling that he needed a new ability. "Does she know how to get it?" Xingzi put her hand on the keyboard and said that she knew, because it was not secret information. She would send the information to him now. In fact, it is not only about spiritual power, magic power, vengefulness, and power of the mind. All of this is only energy by nature, and their methods of awakening are special. The basic principle is that distortion changes the human body and allows you to create and use energy. Exercises, spiritual stones, and treasures are all sources of energy. Guyan happily asked, "What is the safest way to awaken?" Xingzi looked down and replied, "Received game rewards. There are many rewards that can be used for awakening, and most people use these methods." The protagonist quickly stood up from his chair and asked what would be the best way to awaken the ability. Xingzi clarified that there was something and said that she would send it to him. After some time, day turned to night. MC thoughtfully walked in circles around the room. He decisively slammed his hands on the table and yelled that everything was decided. Guyan noticed a sparkling crystal lying on the table. The crystal of eternal fire sorrow is a stone shrouded in a trace of sorrow fire. It can withstand his suffering and burn the body or awaken the power of fate and creation. After some time, the protagonist, looking at the crystal, thought that according to Xingzi's information, this thing would help in awakening. The crystal of eternal fire sorrow, a high probability of awakening spiritual power and a low probability of obtaining the ability to steal fire. Use food. Note, a more painful process. MC brought the crystal to his open mouth and thought that he would first complete the task and then activate it to help. He quickly swallowed the crystal. Guyan smirked and scratched his cheek with his finger and noted that it didn't taste that bad. He instantly pressed his lips together and tensed up in pain. The protagonist fell from the chair, leaning his hand on the floor. He clenched his palms into a fist and yelled that it was very hot. Something was exploding in his stomach. The system window notified that the Eternal Fire Tribulation Crystal had changed the physical state of the owner. MC, with a red face, shook and exclaimed that this was the activation of spiritual power. Now he understood how it was used. The system window notified that the spiritual transformation was complete. The firepower was increased. The progress was 5%. Guyan tensely put his hand to his head and yelled that this was a curse. No wonder the probability of obtaining a fire ability is low. Is it even possible to achieve 100% progress? He slammed his fist on the table in anger. A peach rolled towards his fist and MC noticed it. He barely restrained himself, pursed his lips and quickly grabbed the peach and began to eat it. The system window notifies that the owner's physical condition has improved and his endurance has increased. Current progress is 21%. Guyan, with sweat running down his face from the heat, asked the system to invest all items into improving his physique. Flames engulfed the protagonist's food lying on the table, and he quickly began to eat it. The system window notifies that the current progress is growing. The system congratulated MC on fully studying the ability of fire. Guyan sat down on a chair tiredly and noted that he was finally done. He asked the system to open his bag. The protagonist grinned in confusion and, lowering his head, said that this was not bad. He received almost all the rewards for completing the first task. MC looked at the dark flame coming from his finger with a smile and asked, "He doesn't do all this for nothing, does he?" The system congratulated him on completing the hidden task. Guyan was very surprised and asked, "What is this?" The system window notifies that the hidden task is one step ahead. For the third copy, you need to unlock the spiritual energy system. Completed. Reward, the help center is opened. The protagonist sternly asked, "What kind of help center is this?" The system window notifies that the help center opens before each task for the copy. There, the owner of the system can exchange his points for the purchase of props that can help during the passage. For example, local currency, special clothes, and other unique props. MC put his hand to his chin and looking down, noted that he thought this was very useful. But what should he do for the time being these few days? Guyan looked up in amazement, remembering something. He picked up the box and dragged it to the side. The protagonist looked at the statue on the floor and said that he would deal with it. The system window notified that this was Empress Sanchuan Mingmu. Blood was required. It was impossible to track the power, but the statues definitely had demonic energy. There was an assumption that this was the incarnation of some kind of god. Guyan smiled, squatted down and put his hand on the shoulder of the statue and said that he didn't care what it was like before. Now, it would walk on the bright side, and there would be no problems with the sacrifice. The protagonist threw his item on the floor. He clarified that in any case, these things from the game needed to be put somewhere. A terrifying energy spread from Mingmu, and something strange in the bag began to move. After a while, a call came from Qinglin. MC picked up the phone and asked what was going on. She replied that it was time to open the second copy of the game. The bureau sent task force members. They will be arriving any minute. Guyun headed for the door and asked, "Does that mean today already?" After a while, he confidently put on his suit and said that he was almost ready. He hoped that he hadn't missed or forgotten anything. The protagonist turned his attention to the bureau members standing in the room. He scratched his head in confusion and asked, "Do you have to look like that?" There was such tension coming from them. Xingzi noted that this was their job and said that MC would soon get used to it. At the same time, she was looking at him through the computer screen. Xingzi, sitting on a chair, added that in the end, everything needed to be monitored well so that no problems arose in the copy. Guyun said that they needed to hurry and asked, "Would the copy be dangerous?" Xingzi, biting off a cookie, replied that it was very dangerous. If they ended up in this copy, the survival rate would be only 10%. But there was still something that needed to be done. They would be there all the time. The protagonist looked down sadly and replied that he understood. MC asked with interest, "Can he contact her while in the copy?" Xingzi was surprised and disagreed, clarifying that they currently do not have such technologies. Guyun asked, then why should he keep in touch with her at all? Xingzi threw a cookie in her mouth and replied that she would help him cope with his emotions. He could talk to her to relieve stress and tension, thereby increasing his chances of passing the copy. The protagonist calmly said that then there was nothing to be done. They would communicate, at least in the chat. The system window notifies that there are still 15 minutes before the start of the game. You need to go to the preparation area in advance. MC looked at his hand and, dissolving into space, noticed that it was starting. He instantly disappeared, leaving streams of smoke on the floor. The bureau member put his finger to the earphone and said into the microphone that Guyun entered the game and went into a state of combat readiness. The protagonist, sitting on a seat on the bus, turned his attention to the driver. MC looked to the side and thought, "Is this a bus?" Several people were transported into the game. Jin Gang advised everyone to calm down and asked, "Will they listen, right?" A crushed can fell to the floor. Player Sumei asked in fear, "What kind of place is this?" Gang approached her with an ominous smile and asked, "Is she new? Did she really not receive anything?" Mei answered with great fear that she did, but did not understand what it was. Gang sternly clarified, "Did she think it was spam?" He laughed and remarked that he thought her death would be very interesting. But Mei does not need to worry, he will take care of her. Gang promised that everything will be fine, and Mei in a panic asked him not to come closer. The protagonist wondered what Gang was going to do. The goal of the task is still unknown to him, so it is better not to interfere. Mei stopped, hitting the chair, and Gang, holding out his hand towards her, asked where she was retreating. Is she really that afraid of him? He asked to let him play with Mei for a little while. MC got very angry and thought that he could not watch this anymore. He quickly grabbed Gang's hand, and the man sternly asked what the guy was doing. Guyun squeezed the opponent's hand harder, and Gang, gritting his teeth in pain, thought that he had great strength. The protagonist, looking into the opponent's eyes, enveloped his hand in dark flame. Gang quickly jumped aside and clarified that first they need to complete the task, and then think about such a thing. MC sternly raised his hand, enveloped in flame, and said that she would have to punish the enemy. Gang looked at him with fury and rushed into battle with great speed. Guyun raised his hand and Gang, stopping, said that he did not want to waste his strength on this. It would be better to leave it for the task. The protagonist calmly lowered his hand, dispelling the flames. The system window notifies that a special task has been completed. The hero saves a beautiful girl. The reward for the task is 300 merit points. MC thought that this was the reward. He was very surprised when he felt Mei pull at his jacket. She sheepishly lowered her head and thanked him. MC looked at her with a smile and replied that everything was fine. He did what he had to. Player Zhu Geguang noticed the watch on the protagonist's right hand and approached him. He extended his hand to Goyun and said that judging by the protagonist's clothes, it can be concluded that MC is from the bureau. He got it right? Maybe the protagonist will introduce himself? Goyun shook Geguang's hand with his left hand and said his code name, Zhu Long. Geguang put his hand to his chest and said his name. He pointed at his friend and said that his name was Xiao Dao and that they were from the same club, Tianyang. Gang looked at them with fear and asked, Tianyang Club? Guyun thought sternly that Tianyang Club, according to the information he had received, was an early player organization. Geguang said that the two of them were from there, so it turns out that we can choose a team game. Geguang walked past the protagonist with a smile and exclaimed that the rest of the MC can rely on him. It seems that he also knows about Tianyang, so Gang had better not swear. Geguang put his hand on Gang's shoulder and clarified that he also thinks that they should think about the task first. He asked with a terrified look, "What will the player say?" Gang shook in fear and replied that the player was right. Gigwang smiled and removed his hand from his shoulder and said that then he should apologize. Gang bowed in front of the protagonist and apologized to the players for his behavior. Gigwang clapped his hands happily and remarked that it was good. He was glad that everything had worked out. Only by working together would they be able to complete the job. MC thought that it was not bad. The player had established his identity as the team leader. Guyan looked at Gigwang's reflection in the window and thought that the player was definitely not that simple. Mei approached the chair and asked if she could sit here. The protagonist calmly allowed her to sit. He mentally asked the system to open the help center. The system window notified that there were green tickets for 200 points, data for 400, and a card for 100. MC exchanged with the help center. The bus sped along the highway. One guy will die, and the corpses will rise. No one will go against the spirits. One will die, and there will be many monsters. Everyone will burn. After a while, the bus stopped, and the players went outside. They noticed the red system window, which notified that the task was completed, an ominous moon in the sky. The condition is to finish the revenge. The background is that they are spies from the Supernatural Containment Organization, stationed in Zone X. A strange murder occurred in the small town of Haishuai. The players pretended to be emergency services personnel and came to find out if there really was a supernatural shadow behind the case. Gigwang put his hand under his shirt and pulled out a document confirming that he was an emergency services officer. He looked at it and asked if the task was doable. The difficulty of the copy did not seem high. The players paid attention to it, and Dao asked with confusion, "Why did the master say that?" Gigwang asked with a smile. Perhaps the completion condition for their previous copies was to survive until the end of a certain event. Although the survival mission is dangerous, at least all the conditions are known there. No matter what they do, the most important thing is to survive until the end. But if certain conditions are not met now, the copy will not complete. Gigwang lit a cigarette and added that if the player were to take the initiative to investigate, they would likely encounter some unknown dangers and rules. He put his hand on Dao's shoulder and noted that this was the third copy of his friend. Therefore, they should be more careful than ever. Gigwang exhaled heavily and said that the game's difficulty might have been increased. In general, it would be better to work together to successfully complete the copy. Guyan tensed up and put his hand to his chin. After a while, the players walked along a road in the fog. Gigwang clarified that their only clue was the strange murder mentioned in the mission's backstory. He suggested starting with that. Gang put his hand on his head in confusion and asked, "Are they going to go to the police? They have documents, right?" Dao put his hand on his shoulder and replied that they couldn't. The screen said that Zone X is a special organization and the outside world doesn't know about it. The documents are fake, and most of the residents will guess about it. As soon as the police check the serial number of the document, they will be solved. The protagonist confidently said that he had an idea. After some time, the villager was sitting on a chair. The MC pushed the chair and said hello, that he was a reporter from the newspaper. He wanted to see the scene of a recent murder in the city. Could the villager please show him the way? The villager irritably raised his hat and called the protagonist a freak and yelled that the MC had disturbed his sleep. Guyan handed over the money and the villager was very surprised. In the eyes of the villager, the protagonist immediately became a better person. The MC shook his hand with a smile and asked if he could be shown the way. The villager happily agreed and exclaimed that no problem. After some time, the villager pointed to the side and said that John's house was over there. Guyan wondered why John lived in such a remote place. The villager pointed to his head and replied that ever since his wife and children ran away, John had become crazy and then moved here. They say that John believed in all sorts of weird things. So the daughter and wife left. After some time, the players removed the tapes from the door of the house. Gigwang suggested going inside. What if they find something suitable there? The protagonist replied that it was no problem. The villager asked in confusion, "Are there any questions?" MC put his hands on the villager's shoulders and asked him not to worry and said that they would figure it out when the police arrived. Guyan smiled and asked to tell him about John again and asked what he believed in. The villager thoughtfully put his hand to his chin and replied that he didn't really know him that well. Remembers that John moved here 10 years ago. When he and his wife first moved here, they were full of enthusiasm, were very kind people. Although they were not locals, they were still accepted without any problems. 5 years later, they had a child. But John was a little strange. The girl always kept to herself, never played with others. John noticed this too. He found exorcists who helped drive the devil out of his daughter. But his approach angered his wife. Eventually, they got divorced and the mother and daughter left his house. Then John moved into the house, completely out of his mind. That's all the villager knows. They'll have to contact the police for more details. The protagonist asked, did the villager just say that John wasn't from around here? Were there any special features to his background? The villager raised his hands and replied that he actually had nothing to do with it. He didn't know anything. A loud bang was heard to the side, and they noticed it. The MC looked at the player and asked what was going on. Gigwang replied that they heard the sound of police officers approaching. Officer Max got out of the car and yelled, "Who are they? What are they doing here?" He ordered everyone to raise their hands while holding a donut in his hand. The villager turned to the officer and said that they were reporters who had come to collect case materials. Max ordered him to shut up and asked, "Can they enter and exit the crime scene?" The villager knew that this was illegal. The protagonist calmly approached the officer. He smirked and said that he knew it. Max asked sternly, "Are they really reporters?" MC held out his ID. At the same time, Dao asked with confusion, "Where did they get it from?" Gigwang asked his comrade to just look. The officer opened the envelope and saw money in it. Max threw the donut aside with a smile and coughed. He noticed that they had a good ID. But they can't walk around here at their own discretion, right? Guyun smiled and threw his hand over the officer's shoulder and said that they were only here to take some photos for the report. This case is very complicated and strange, so they wouldn't refuse details. Max clarified in surprise that the evidence cannot be shown to outsiders until the case is closed. The protagonist, pulling out an envelope with money, noted that they were not strangers but good friends. He quietly said that there were 3 packs. The officer smiled and scratched his head and exclaimed that they were good friends. He asked to remind him what the protagonist's name was. Dao asked if that was really possible. Maybe they could also put aside some money in the future? Gigwang clarified, and could his comrade attract outside money to the game? Dao was stunned and disagreeing, asked where MC got it from. Gigwang raised his hand in farewell to the resident and thought that this guy was definitely not that simple. Goyin, going up the stairs, said that Officer Max had gone to help them collect evidence at the police station. "What about them? Have you found out anything?" The deceased was supposed to end his life, but he had some problems with the weapon. How could John cut himself into 7 to 8 pieces? Mei was very scared when she heard this. The protagonist asked the system to show the task in his mind with a serious expression. He read the task and thought that there were no hints, but apparently, self-destruction is not the real cause of death. At the same time, Max, looking to the side, illuminated the space around with a flashlight. He opened the room and found an envelope. MC noted that it seemed that all that remained was to wait for the policeman. After some time, a cup of hot tea was on the table. Guyan picked it up and thanked the player. Mei looked at him with embarrassment, holding a tray in her hands. Gang sternly crossed his arms and asked, "Is this a good time for tea? Aren't they scared?" The protagonist replied that he checked everything. The room was not dirty. Gigwang folded his arms and asked, "Does MC have any information?" Guyan said that at some point, the now deceased John moved to this city. Judging by the rumors, everyone here believes in sects. He is not surprised that the mission fell in this place. Mei asked if they were going to Heishui. The protagonist looked at her and asked her not to rush. First, they would collect enough evidence and then go to the boss. After a while, the players heard the sound of a police car flashing. MC stood up from his chair and said that it looked like their friend the officer was back. He hoped that Max had brought them at least some good news. Guyan left the house and headed towards the officer. Max looked away in fear and remarked that they had better hurry. They understood that he was taking a big risk by taking this outside. The officer gave the box of documents to MC and exclaimed that he understood everything and replied that they would do everything quickly. He put money in the officer's hands and remarked that they would never hurt their friends. The players were sitting at the table looking at the documents. Gang was surprised and jumped up from his chair, shouting that he had found it. He smiled, pointed at the photo and said that this guy who died under mysterious circumstances, his name was Tom Soros. The document says that an experimental incident occurred at the Fatileo Medical Center. One of the patients died tragically. Guyun turned his head to the side and turned to the officer and asked what year it was. Max replied that it was 1957 and asked what was that. The protagonist put his finger to his lips and thought that the date of this article was 1927. So their task is to deal with the spirit of a man who died 30 years ago? Mei raised her hand and said that she had also found something. It was John's diary. In his diary, John wrote that he became interested in different religions after an evil spirit began to haunt him. He also mentioned that even when John escaped from that city, this spirit did not leave him alone. John wrote that those who participated in those experiments all died. Very soon, death will overtake him too. He has already repented of all his sins and asks for the spirit's mercy. Mei put the diary on the table and the protagonist said that he seemed to understand everything. The officer was surprised and asked what MC understood. He doesn't understand anything at all. Guyan picked up the box of documents and clarified that there was nothing special, just a few clues from the news. He confidently smiled, thanked Max, and noted that it was very useful. MC said that the officer could go back and asked him to try not to get caught. Max quickly left. Guyan coughed and going up the stairs said that he thought he had an idea. Do they remember the children's song before the mission? May put her finger to her mouth and replied that she remembered something like, one person died, the body was buried in a grave, but the soul was never found. And there was also, one person died, an evil spirit appeared, an entire city disappeared. The protagonist sternly said that, judging by John's diary, everything fits. Soros died 30 years ago in a medical center as a result of some experiment and turned into an evil spirit. Gegwang clarified, did the MC mean to say that the first line of the song was also a hint? Guyan confirmed this and replied that this is exactly what he thought. Gang tensely clenched his teeth and put his hands on his head and asked, can they stop talking in riddles? He doesn't understand anything at all. The protagonist calmly said that they thought the first line of the song was hinting at John. The phrase, the soul was never found, could have the opposite meaning. If they can find his soul, then maybe they will get some clues. Dao clarified that he can try to trace the last moments of John's life, but he needs more information related to him. Guyan looked up in amazement and exclaimed that he understood. The protagonist asked the player to follow him. After a while, the MC handed the shovel to the player. Dao asked in confusion, what is Long up to? Guyan smirked and clarified, didn't the player say that he needed more materials? They are going to dig up a grave. Dao swallowed his saliva in fear and looked at the grave and asked, is the protagonist serious? MC did not answer and began to dig the grave. He sternly clarified that less talk, more action. If someone comes, it will be too late. Players quickly dig up the grave. Gang, tired, exhaled while sitting in the hole. He looked at the sun with great surprise and asked, wasn't it just dark? May, quickly running to the hole, screamed that something was happening. The protagonist raised his head and asked, did someone come? May excitedly disagreed and exclaimed that they were fish. After some time, a blue whale flew across the dark sky. Gang pointed at it in surprise and asked, what kind of things were they? May anxiously answered that she didn't know. They suddenly appeared from the grave. MC used his skill and looked at the fish and thought that Yin's eyes were not reacting, so they were not ghosts. They don't interact with objects, just hallucinations. Xiaodao shouted that there were more and more of them. What should they do now? Sumei heard someone laughing and Gang was fighting off the illusions. The dolphin changed its color to red and launched a water ball at him, hitting Gang right in the back. He screamed in pain and grabbed his head, and Xiaodao asked what was happening to him. Gigwang examined him and said that there was no external damage, it looked like a psychic attack. They would be fine from one touch, but if there were too many of them, the consequences could be serious. MC realized that they had no choice but to fight. Gigwang started shooting, and Goyen launched spiritual seals at their opponents. The shot injured the illusion, but the talisman simply bounced off the jellyfish. Gigwang assumed that these fish were most likely just spiritual projections, so talismans were useless here. Maybe he had something that could attack spirits? The protagonist decided to try something and wrapped his hand with a talisman in energy, then threw it at the enemy. Xiaodao shouted that the dolphin began to recover, and there were more and more phantoms around. Guyun realized that this laughter was their key to what was happening. They just need to find the source of the laughter and destroy it. But where is it hiding? Sumei seems to know where it is. She told him that at first she only had a vague feeling, but then it became brighter. Something was hiding inside that tree. Gigwang said that now all that was left was to trust the girl and make a bet, and Goyun agreed with him. They both ran to that tree and started shooting back at the opponents, and she ran after them and warned that it was on the tree, on the right branch. Goyun used his powers and threw a fireball where she pointed, and several bullets flew there with it. They collided with a red barrier, and a disfigured woman appeared on the branch. She screamed loudly, causing everyone to fall to their knees, and MC's mind flashed with her memories of how she was mocked on the operating table. Pulling himself together, he hit the floor with a golden statuette, and a formidable beast appeared behind him, protecting him from the mental attack. The woman was alarmed. She wanted to scream again, but Guyun quickly appeared next to her and dealt with her. After that, all the opponents disappeared, and a document appeared in the place of the woman. MC ran his eyes over it, then jumped from the branch and read out to everyone what was written there. Subject number 11. Abilities. Emotional resonance, mental blow. This subject can project his emotions onto others, instantly causing the strongest mental attacks. The name of the organization is the Fatileo Medical Center. This is the same place where the incident with Tom occurred 30 years ago. Most likely, the hospital was just a cover. In fact, it was a research center for the study of abnormal people. Gigwang nodded, saying that it seemed like he was right, and then Mei anxiously pointed to the tree and said that there was something else behind it. He immediately turned around and looked closely at the tree, then walked around it and thought that there was nothing here. He had an idea and used the yin eyes. Then he saw John's soul. His comrades came up to him and asked if he had found anything, and he told them that there was John's residual soul. It could only be seen with the yin eyes. He gave them some ox tears so that they could look at it too. They smeared it on their eyelids, after which a soul appeared in front of them, and Dao was very surprised, making sure that it was really John. Mei asked in fear why she could even feel such things, and MC told her that she was starting to awaken her ability. Some people are affected by anomalies just by being near them, and she was one of them. He patted her head and told her with a smile not to worry. It was even good. It proved that she had an unusual talent. She calmed down and looked at him embarrassedly, after which Geguang asked Dao, "Will he be able to return the memories?" He touched the soul and told him that he would succeed, then put his hand inside and Guyan asked what he was doing. Geguang told him that he was synchronizing with the residual soul. It was like mediumship, communicating with spirits. In this way, they might learn something else. A mouth opened on his palm, which absorbed the soul, and then Dao fell to the ground unconscious. A second later he woke up, but only his body was already controlled by John. He raised his head and asked, "Who are they? Isn't he dead?" Geguang sat down opposite him and said that he really died. They want to deal with Tom Soros, so they summoned his soul and hoped to get some information from him. John looked down and said that this is an evil spirit. They better not get close to it. Everyone who comes into contact with it will die. MC came closer and asked, "Is the evil spirit Tom Soros?" So he didn't die in that accident 30 years ago, but became the same spiritual being as test subject number 11. He exclaimed that there was only one evil spirit from the beginning. He absorbed the souls of the other test subjects, gaining their abilities. All these evil spirits are him. Guyan and Geguang looked at each other. They realized that if the other test subjects are his fragmented souls, then he already knows they are here. MC put his hand on John's shoulder and asked why he followed him for so long. Why did he even leave a spirit here to watch him? What is he trying to do? The man shuddered with fear and hugged himself by the shoulders, saying that this was his revenge. He does not allow his soul to ascend. He wants everyone who participated in that experiment, their children, to suffer. He recreated the experiments on everyone around him, and then absorbed those who awakened their abilities. Goyen thoughtfully noted that it meant the city could be a part of him. And John said that there weren't many awakened, only 1 in 100. The rest were just toys for him. He stretched out his hand to the sky and asked them to save them and Anna, then left, and Dao regained consciousness. He stood up and said that his soul had burned, but he saw the reason for his death. After much torment, his mind broke, and the evil spirit of Tom took over his body, which is why he died such a terrible death. After that, the system reported the completion of the quest to investigate John's mysterious death, for which MC received 1,000 achievement points and 50 key concentration pills, which had already been sent to his backpack. He thought that this was not a bad thing, because by taking 1 pill every hour, he could increase the limit of spiritual power by 1. Dao, meanwhile, anxiously turned to Geguang and said that if everything was as John said, then the difficulty of this quest would not be easy. He agreed with him and said that the evil spirit had already absorbed an unknown number of abilities and created many copies of itself. What's worse is that it can inhabit ordinary people. In this city, it is impossible to distinguish an enemy from an ally. After his words, Guyan had an idea and said that perhaps he had a way to solve this problem. He told them everything, and Geguang asked in surprise, is he seriously going to do this? As far as he remembers, the anomaly department is categorically against revealing the supernatural. He answered him with a sly smile that reality is real, but they are now in the dungeon, so such a chance cannot be missed. After that, they went to the police station, and Max was there right now. He was thinking of relaxing after a day of work and looking at a car dealership, but he noticed Guyan nearby, who turned to another officer to file a report. The old man could not hear him, and MC repeated himself a few more times. Then Max called out to him and asked with a smile what he was doing here. Is he in some kind of problem? He told him that they were actually having some trouble, so they came here for help. This made Max immediately get nervous and covered the envelope with money with his hand, and Guyan noticed this and told him not to worry. It had nothing to do with that. He took his ID out from under his jacket and said that they were not actually journalists but emergency officers. They work for the National Agency for the Study of Supernatural Forces, Sector X. Their job is to deal with all cases involving aliens, cults, monsters, and other supernatural phenomena. Max scratched his head in confusion and asked, is this some new joke? But when MC showed him his purple flame to convince him, he only got more scared and exclaimed, is he showing him a trick? Guyan lost his patience and sighed heavily, asking Jin Gang to handle it, and he stepped forward. pounded his chest with his fist, and declared that he could handle it. After that, he froze in place, concentrated, and his body began to increase in size, tearing his clothes. Then he exclaimed that his body was made of solid iron. Bullets did not take, fire and water were not scary to him. Now, did he understand everything? MC touched him with a burning finger and held it on his skin for a few seconds, after which a black dot appeared at the place of touch. Feeling pain, the man cried and waved his hand, exclaiming, "What is he doing?" He apologized to him with an awkward smile and said that it was just a little curiosity. This will not happen again. Now that the officer believed them, he fell to the floor from shock and asked, "Are they really from Sector X?" Guyan helped him up and said that a supernatural incident occurred in Haishui. Their agent died. Now they cannot contact the organization, so they came to him for help. He replied to him in confusion that he didn't know how to contact their organization, and he advised him to go to the boss, and if he didn't know, to the governor, and so on. At some level, they would definitely know. Max nodded decisively and said that he would go to the boss right away, after which he ran forward along the corridors, and Gaegwang, looking after him, asked Guyan, was he sure that this should have been used? He answered him that it was worth a try. And after a while, William from Sector X, the head of supernatural affairs, showed up at the police station. He asked Guyan if he was the pig dragon. He told him his name and noted that the sound pig could sound like an insult. William ignored this and said that they did send several agents to investigate John's case, but they were not connected with them. He could not restrain himself and slammed his fist on the table in rage, exclaiming who the hell they were and how did they know about Sector X. MC told him not to be nervous, they are not enemies. He stood up from his chair and walked around the table, asking, "They have already sent people to check the situation in Haishui, right? They want to offer him help." William asked why they wanted to help them, and he told him that it was because eliminating evil spirits was also their job. Basically, it was a win-win cooperation. He clarified, "Is this a deal?" He told him that he would prefer to call it a cooperation, and William said that such a cooperation requires capital, but the information he provided was already in their possession. He had no reason to just hand over his powers to them. Guyun took off the watch from his wrist and showed it to him, asking, "How about exchanging this for something?" This watch has a Geiger counter built into it. It can detect different levels of distortion and what they call supernatural powers. He is sure he understands how valuable this is. William asked if he could do some checks and he handed him the watch, agreeing to it. After that, he left and MC asked him to wait. He didn't notice how he fell asleep, and William woke him up. He opened his eyes and yawned, asking, "Have they made a decision yet?" He told him that after discussion, the organization agreed to cooperate with them to solve the problems of Haishu together. Guyan got up from his chair and stretched, suggesting that he not waste time, but discuss the details of their cooperation. Soon after their conversation, leaflets began to fall on the streets of the city and the heads of local residents. One of them took a closer look at it. It was an evacuation guide from the government. They were shocked. Finally, they would be able to leave this place, and they would be saved. From this news, the residents burst into tears of happiness and ran to the exit of the city, full of strength. Meanwhile, a soldier reported to the commander that the first group of helicopters responsible for distributing leaflets had already returned to the base, and the second was preparing to take off. William asked how the audio system was, and at that moment the loudspeakers started hissing, and several cars drove through the streets of the city, announcing the evacuation. The soldier said that the security team was entering the city from different directions. The coverage was guaranteed, and William said that this was great. They would continue in the same spirit. The soldier saluted him, and at that moment, applause was heard from the side. MC approached William and said that he was efficient and professional as an ally. He was truly reliable. He told him that a disaster that could plunge an individual into despair was just a trifle for the state machine working at full capacity. He looked at the small group of residents that the soldiers detained and said that according to the agreement, the task of identifying Tom Clom clones among the fleeing people was their job. MC put his hand on May's shoulder and told him not to worry. He had brought the right person. Meanwhile, the isolated people were worried that they were not allowed to leave, and the soldier asked them to remain quiet. There was one last step left. They were all very nervous, and May looked at them, and Guyun asked, "Will there be any problems?" She nodded and looked at the city residents with determination, then closed her eyes and concentrated on her feelings. Among this group of people, she identified 3 problematic people and pointed at them. An old man, a man, and a middle-aged woman. William waved his hand, giving the order to act, and the soldiers shot electric shocks at the designated people. Their commander ordered them to restrict the freedom of movement of the rest, and also to guard them well. They grabbed the unconscious people, and MC smiled and told May that he would leave the rest to her. And she promised him that she would try her best. After that, he headed to the tent and asked his comrades, "Are they ready?" But when he saw what was happening inside, he was slightly surprised. Jin Gang was examining the grenades, Gaegwang was trying to aim his revolver, and Dao was putting on his bulletproof vest. Now they were all ready to go on stage. They walked out of the tent, and William said that the evacuation was almost complete. 85% of the civilians had already left. There were currently about 80 people left in the city who refused to leave this place. They would send 2 groups, a total of 30 soldiers, to support them. However, they did not have any supernatural resilience, so they would have to rely on themselves when fighting Tom Soros. The system informed Guyun that the task of reducing the casualties among ordinary citizens had been completed, and gave a reward of 5,000 achievement points and 1 spin of the skill wheel. He immediately took advantage of this, and the wheel spun, after which the arrow pointed to a skill called Thundercloud Steps. Tianbo Guang's exclusive light move, comparable to Wave Steps and Divine Floating, is one of the 3 greatest light skills in the martial arts world. This skill is great for long-range rush attacks, and greatly increases the speed of straight movement. MC wondered, wasn't Tianbo Guang a lecher? Although, the description sounds good. William called out to him several times, pulling him out of his thoughts, and asked what he was thinking about. He learned the skill and told him that he just remembered something good. He closed the system window and said that the situation was already better than he expected, so let them leave the rest to them. Together with the soldiers, they headed into the city, and May used her powers again, after which she pointed out the direction to the soldiers and said that there were 2 people ahead, hiding around that corner. They took the information, and meanwhile, 2 city dwellers, a man and a woman, were peeking out from the corner. But suddenly a chain with heavy ends unwinding in the sky appeared, which fell on them and tied them up. They tried to get out, but froze when they saw soldiers and guns pointed at them. One of them said into the radio that the target was captured, and May told him that she understood everything, and then turned around thinking that she needed to catch up with Goyun and the others as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, they were walking around the city, and Gaegwang chuckled, saying that he didn't expect that it was possible to complete the task in such a way. Originally, they were supposed to break into the city, face Tom's spiritual parasites. Even if they got there, they would be exhausted and wounded. If not for complete defeat, then victory would have come at the cost of huge losses. But in the end, everything turned out completely differently. He looked at the fleeing people and the soldiers who were trying to catch them. And MC put a hand on his shoulder, saying that it was not his fault. For public organizations like their End of the World, such limited thinking is common. There is no need to try to solve everything on your own. Let him report when necessary and ask for help if needed. The state will always be their reliable support. The man smiled wryly and said with irritation that he would take his words into account, after which a soldier with May approached them and said that the road to the Fatileo Medical Center was cleared. All parasitic entities were suppressed. The mission to escort Miss Su was completed. Guyun asked why she came too, since it would be safer to stay in the camp. She told him that she had already identified all the residents and thought that she might be able to help him. So she asked them to take her with them. He sighed heavily and told her to stay close and not fall behind. After which, one of the soldiers reported that all the soldiers had begun to experience visual hallucinations and sensory distortions, and their aggressiveness continued to increase. If this worsened, it could affect their thoughts and actions. The leadership had already taken away the evacuation request. He himself had already begun to see flickering dots in front of his eyes, and the colors were beginning to distort. MC said that he understood everything, and they would handle the rest themselves. And then the soldier gave the order to retreat, and they all stood at attention and saluted. Dao smiled, and Jin Gang said that it was so unexpected, he even felt some kind of sense of duty. Guyun resolutely headed towards the medical center and said that if they lost, then trouble would start in both worlds. They approached a huge building that smelled dangerous, and May, hiding behind MC, asked if they needed to go there. He asked Jin Gang to deal with the door, and he, gathering all his strength in his fist, hit the entrance with all his might, and the door shattered into many pieces. Guyun told everyone to go inside and carefully examine everything around, and Gaegwang said that he didn't think that they would get to the enemy's lair so easily. After that, they went inside, and May looked around, noticing that it was so dark. Noticing a sparkle in this pitch darkness, MC grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her aside, after which 3 syringes were stuck into the floor near her feet, and he exclaimed, "Who is here? Let him stop hiding." The attacker came out of the wall. It turned out to be a spirit. But he was not alone. They were surrounded by translucent entities on all sides. Guyun took out a golden statuette and asked, They realized that they would be quickly killed alone, so they decided to join forces. The spirits simultaneously said that no one would stop them, and they would all die, and the MC, lighting a purple flame in his hand, said with a smile that the plan was not bad, but they all forgot one thing. His flame enveloped him, and he disappeared, causing his opponent to look around, and then he appeared out of nowhere right in front of him and grabbed him by the neck, then set him on fire. The spirit's body instantly burst into flames, and soon after, only a handful of ash remained, and Guyan said that even if you collect a bunch of garbage, he will still remain garbage. He turned to the others and asked who's next? Another spirit decided to attack him from above. He climbed onto the ceiling and spat something at him, and he, jumping to the side, asked, "Is it corrosive slime?" "Too bad, but it's too slow." He quickly turned around and rushed towards his opponent, then grabbed his head and set it on fire, and while it was slowly burning, he said that if he couldn't hit it, there was no point. After that, he shouted loudly, "Does anyone need help?" Gaegwang easily dealt with the spirit with his pistols, and Jin Gang used the tiger's help. Seeing that they were all doing well, he shrugged and headed with the guys to the next spirit and said that only he was left. 3 minutes later, they dealt with the enemies, and Jin Gang handed Goyun the tiger statue, saying that it was good that he had this artifact. Otherwise, he really wouldn't have been able to deal with these incorporeal creatures. Gaegwang approached him and said that the test subjects were eliminated, but the task was not yet completed. It seemed that Tom's real body was not among them. After his words, all the men turned to Mei, and she said in confusion that she would try to feel it again, then closed her eyes and they began to wait. Finally, she finished and said that there was only one energy source left, but it was underground. After that, they all began to search. Dao was dismantling a wall of some boxes and found a door. Since these guys were Chinese, they did not understand what was written on the sign above the door at first, and when they found out that this was a morgue, they felt uneasy. MC told them not to be afraid. The ghosts they met outside had already been destroyed, after which they went down. They passed by vessels with monsters swimming inside, and they all realized that the medical center on the surface was just a cover. The real lab was here. Guyan looked at the door at the end of the corridor and asked Mei if the energy source was really here. She confirmed it, and they opened the door, finding the spirit of Tom inside, who was mocking the body of the dead man. Without being distracted from the matter, he told them that once it was here, that they conducted experiments on them. His family, his people, they were all subjected to terrible torture. In the end, they were burned in the crematorium. The guys and the girl got nervous, and Tom said that later they tied him to the operating table too, but they themselves could not withstand even a third of the experiment. He turned to them with a creepy smile and asked, "Do not you find it funny? Those who conducted the experiments could not survive the consequences of their own experiments." MC asked, "Is this his reason for taking revenge on the city?" He answered him that this is not revenge at all, it is a war of his people against humanity. He did not understand him a little and asked, "Are they not people?" The man answered him that they do not belong to this lower race. Their blood is from the depths of the seas and the stars. They received the blessing of the ancient gods. People envied this gift and began to hunt him and his relatives. This war began a long time ago. After his words, a system notification about the task completion appeared in front of Guyan. He unlocked a new fragment of the world, Descendants of the Deep. He finally learned how this task was completed, and suddenly a notification about an abnormal condition appeared. Tom said that people are proud and arrogant. They think they are omnipotent and believe that everything is under control. Meanwhile, they all felt a strong weakness in their bodies and fell down. Only one MC stood firmly on his feet. He grinned and said that this is very good. Emotions are off the scale. And then what? Tom was surprised that he did not weaken like his comrades, and Guyun showed him a heart-cleansing pill that cleanses the mind, eliminates poison, and neutralizes most toxins, and said that his supplies were not exhausted yet, and therefore he was not poisoned. Tom got angry and exclaimed that this was impossible. The paralyzing gas, Fatileo, is an advanced development. There is no antidote against it. MC said that their Eastern cultivation methods were difficult to explain in terms of their Western science, and Tom, realizing that he had to get out of here, cursed loudly and started to run, but Guyan blocked his path with his fire and asked where he was going. He was so formidable just now. He was not the only one who could stall for time. He remembered that he was a spiritual being and could pass through walls and fly, after which he snapped his fingers and the flames around Tom's legs grew into a huge cage, now definitely not allowing him to escape. MC thought that although he had not knocked out the combat skill from the Wheel of Fortune, the ability to freely control spiritual power was also not bad. Tom stretched out his hand to the fire and immediately pulled it back, feeling pain, and ordered Guyan to let go of him. Otherwise he would show him what real fear was. He asked why he needed his help at all. He He couldn't get out on his own? By the way, he noticed something interesting. He controls the souls of these test subjects, but they retain the abilities they had when they were alive. So he can't absorb abilities, right? The spirit remained silent, and he said that most likely his only skill is mental parasitism and mental implantation, so his combat abilities are inferior even to these experimental samples. That's why he wanted to use the lab gas to deal with them. Tom got nervous and asked who he was. Why was he helping these inferior creatures? He answered him that he was sorry that his people suffered, but they had their own mission. And as he himself said, this is war, and he has been on the side of humanity since birth. He clenched his hand into a fist and the purple cell flared up stronger, burning Tom, and he finally screamed that he cursed him. Even if his soul burns to ashes, even if his will dissipates, this curse will last forever. MC became nervous and took a few steps back, not understanding what was happening, and Tom, whose spiritual body began to disappear little by little, turned to the gods and said that he was sacrificing his soul and mind, and prayed for them to grant his wish and his curse. He looked at Goyun and told him to repent. He would soon understand that compared to this curse, death was just an easy escape. After that, the black flames burned him, leaving no trace of him, and the system reported the infiltration of chaos. The dungeon is being invaded. The threat level is quite high. William, meanwhile, was observing the situation in the city from the mountain. He saw a fire tornado coming from the medical center and asked his soldier what happened. He informed him that the prototype Geiger counter worked. According to the scale provided by Goyun, the color is red. The threat level is catastrophic. His commander looked at the tornado again and asked, "What the hell is going on?" Meanwhile, black smoke was swirling inside the lab, and then the space cracked and a huge red eye appeared, from which sparks and a red glow emanated. MC became very nervous and asked, "What the hell is this? Did he summon some kind of god of darkness before he died?" Swallowing nervously, he pulled himself together and touched the golden statuette, ordering the white tiger to act. The beast rushed to attack with a loud roar and jumped on the eye, but as soon as it got closer, its body crumbled into many small pieces. Watching this, MC was very surprised, after which he looked up at the huge eye and realized that it noticed him. The unknown creature looked at him, and his eyes immediately rolled back and his legs began to give way. MC grabbed the floor with his hand and began to breathe heavily. He said that just one glance and he would pass out. The portal was spinning in front of him, and he said, "Horror, will it notice again?" Guyun's eyes widened and asked, "Wait, will it notice?" He activated the energy, which rose up in a high column. He thought if he blocked his gaze, maybe he could avoid the attack. A bright sweat of mana burst out from the portal, and MC thought that the consumption of spiritual power was 10 times higher than normal. How much longer could he endure? 10 seconds? Or 8? The system window reported, attempting to exorcise the abnormal object. Reconstruction of the dungeon barrier is in progress. Current progress at the initial stage. Guyun thought that he could not endure it. It should hurry. The system window reported that the chi condensation pill, when consumed, permanently increases the limit of spiritual power by 1 unit. You can only take 1 pill per hour. MC poured out some pills from a small bag and put them in his mouth and thought, who cares? There's no other choice. Guyun's Adam's apple grew and small scratches appeared on his body. He put his hands on the floor and activated mana. The huge portal continued to aim in his direction. The system window reported that the barrier reconstruction progress was at 80%, and a moment later it was already at 85%. MC fell to his knees and the system window reported that the dungeon barrier had been restored. The abnormal object had been expelled. Guyun looked towards the portal, which began to tighten, and asked, "Did it last?" A bright stream of mana burst out of it and headed towards MC, who put up a block and screamed in fear. Suddenly, the energy dissolved, and the system window reported that the task was completed. He successfully prevented Tom Soros's revenge. They congratulate you on completing the game. The reward is being calculated. Please wait. Guyun put his hand on his shoulder and then took it away and asked, "Is it gone?" He asked the system to open personal information. The system window reported, status bar. Abnormal status, disaster beacon. Description. A mark left by the disaster star. The beacon will continuously attract actions to the host until their body, soul, and mind are completely destroyed. MC wondered, what kind of troublesome matter is this? Is there a way to get rid of it? Should I report it to the organization? I wonder how many of them have seen. He turned around and saw people lying on the floor and decided that he should help them first. Guyun crouched on the floor and stuffed a heart-cleansing pill into Sumei's mouth. She woke up and asked, "Julong, did he get rid of that evil spirit?" MC asked, "Didn't she see what happened?" Sumei shook her head and replied that after she fell, she almost immediately lost consciousness. Guyun stood up and told her to rest, while he removed the poison from those 3. He removed the poison from all the players. Then Jin Gang shouted, "What happened? Why did he pass out?" Xiao Dao adjusted his jacket and asked, "Where's the spirit?" Zhuge Guang folded his arms and replied, The system reported that the task was completed. It seems that Julong has already dealt with it. MC waved his hand and said that the true form of this was weak, and it hardly expected that he had an antidote to the poison of this. So he handled it without much trouble. Suddenly, Xiao Dao's eyes widened in surprise and looked towards the destroyed office. He spoke without much trouble. Goyun put his hand on his shoulder and asked, "Is he dissatisfied with something?" Xiao Dao replied, "If he says he handled it easily, then it was." Zhu Geguang smiled and said, "In any case, the successful completion of the quest is largely due to Julong. I wonder if he would like to join the end of the world?" MC asked, "Mr. Geguang, hasn't he forgotten that he is a member of the Public Security Bureau?" Zhu Geguang held out his hand in front of him and said that it is not a problem. The two organizations do not conflict. Among their members, there are many people from the Bureau. The End of the World Society is essentially just a platform for players to communicate. All interactions between Slens are carried out solely by goodwill, so membership in other organizations is not prohibited. He held out his business card and said with a smile on his face, "Of course, their strength cannot be compared to the Bureau, but they have their own unique channels of information and communication that may come in handy at the right time." MC snatched the business card from him and said that he would think about it. Zhu Geguang smiled and replied, "No problem, as long as he decides, he will always be a welcome guest." After a while, Jingang said, "It seems like the time for summing up is coming to an end." MC said that he almost forgot one thing. He put his hand on Sumei's shoulder and asked, "What is her name? Real name and residential address?" She answered slightly embarrassedly, "She is Sumei." She didn't have time to say the address before they were teleported to different places. MC ruffled his hair and asked, "Why is she so crumpled? Does she really think he is hitting on her?" At this moment, a staff member came up to him and said, "Mr. Julong, even they will conduct some checks to make sure he hasn't brought any risk factors out of the dungeon. He hopes for his cooperation." Guyan smiled and said that he completely forgot about this procedure. The staff member began to describe everything necessary and write it down. He said that the mental state is stable. No physical abnormalities were detected, no parasites, identity confirmed, no mimetic distortion. He handed over the tablet and thanked him for his cooperation. "Now, Mr. Julong, he needs to sign here." MC smiled and said, "Okay." He pressed the pen, the cap of which flew towards the vase and broke it. A shard flew towards Guyan, and he dodged it. The shard flew into the wall, and MC asked slightly embarrassedly, if he said that he had been terribly unlucky lately, would he believe it? After a while, Guyan was exercising, doing push-ups quickly. He stood up and said, everything seemed to be fine with his body. He put his hand on his shoulder and thought, it seems that this mark only affects his luck for now. He took out a bottle of water and took a sip from it. He thought, it's time to look at the results. The system window reported that the player had successfully completed the game at B difficulty level. He had completed the main quest and received 5,000 achievement points. Since the side quests were not activated, there are no additional rewards in this game. MC ruffled his hair and thought, this game was clearly much more difficult than the first one, but why was the rating only B? Okay, no point in thinking about it. He decided to take a better look at what he could buy this time. System window reported that new items had appeared in the store. Treatment and recovery. Elixir of all healing. This costs 10,000 achievement points. This completely restores all physical damage received in the last 10 minutes. This does not work on mental trauma and loss of consciousness. This is only used in the game Original Sin. Guyan thought, horror. The price of this thing is several times higher than the previous ones. But since it completely heals all physical damage, this is really a cheating thing. If he buys more, he will then be completely unkillable in the game. The system window reported that this item is an artifact of the highest level of restoration. Each player can only buy one unit. MC smiled and thought, that's how he knew it. The system won't be so kind. The system window reported, since he received the disaster mark in this game, there are new special items in the store. Skill wheel. 20 achievement points. This allows you to randomly obtain a skill that can be used in both the real world and the game. It disappears after 3 spins. Guyan thought in surprise, a skill that can be used in the real world? What a thing. Although he already has an almost infinite number of achievement points, his combat ability is still too low. In fact, even a thug with a knife on the street will easily take him down. This item is just in time. The system window reported, Evil Spirit Essence. This is worth 10,000 achievement points. This is a crystal left over after Tom Soros disappeared. It is only available to the one who defeated him. It contains a strange energy, purpose unknown. MC put his hand to his chin and thought, Evil Spirit Essence? Purpose unknown? Logically, there shouldn't be any useless items in the store, so he should figure out how to use it himself. Wait, does this contain strange energy? If he's not mistaken, this thing can be fed to the mother of the underworld. MC clicked on the Buy All button, and then notifications about receiving various items appeared. Guyan thought, now he'll try this. He He placed the crystal next to Mother and ruffled his hair, thinking, something didn't work. Could he have made a mistake? Suddenly, the statue's eyes lit up, and the mana from the crystal began to spread throughout the room. MC looked around and thought, what the? He looked around and thought, is this the strange energy from the essence? He covered his face with his hands and thought, what a powerful absorption. Mana accumulated around the mother's hands, and her eyes lit up with a bright sparkle. Guyan wiped his forehead and thought, such a huge amount of energy was completely absorbed. Mother, she really has an excellent appetite. Suddenly he heard a voice, insolence. He jumped back in fear, and falling to the floor, he screamed, what the? The statue spoke. Mother said, boy, he arbitrarily brought her to this world, and she has not yet had time to punish him for such a bold sacrilege, and now he even dares to complain, sacrificing measly grains of incense to her? MC approached and asked, she really is the mother of the underworld? She thoughtfully asked, does he doubt it? Guyan fearfully put his palms in front of him and cried out, no, he believes, of course. Mother said, she senses a strange dark energy in him, but now she has only partially recovered her strength and cannot waste it thoughtlessly. She ordered him to bring her more offerings, and then she will help him. MC wiped his sweat and thought, it seems like he really brought a deity to his home. He doesn't even know if this is good or bad. At this moment, his phone received a call. He answered, and on the other end of the call, Qinglin's voice came. What's wrong with him? He sounds so tired. Is he not feeling well? MC replied that he was just a little tired. Qinglin looked at the clipboard with papers and said, she received a report. After completing the quest, he encountered abnormal bad luck. Did something happen in the game? Goyan sat down in the chair and replied, yes, there was something unexpected. It's a long story. Qinglin said dissatisfiedly, in that case, he should immediately send a written report with all the details. The organization should know everything that happened in this game. After a while, at the Human Security Bureau, Qinglin looked at the report and asked, does he have anything to add? MC grabbed his head and said, no, nothing, really. Everything that happened in the dungeon he had already fully described in the report. Professor Bai suddenly ran into the room and shouted, where is Lin Goyan? He raised his hand and said, Uncle Bai, he is here. The professor ran up to him and asked, did his report say that an anomaly invaded his dungeon in the last mission? Goyan replied, yes, that was it. Bai began to pace the room from side to side and talk thoughtfully. That's how. He knew it. His guess was correct. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, and opening the door, a staff member walked in and handed over the papers. Qinglin asked Professor Bai to calm down. First, she should tell Zhu Long about his current condition. Bai cleared his throat and said, according to the data he reported, they have checked the archives. The entity that matches the title, mark, and appearance is only one. The Herald of Disaster, it is Chaos. MC asked again, puzzled, Chaos, what kind of creature is this? Bai replied, to put it simply, it is an evil god. Qinglin placed a piece of paper on the table and said, half a year ago, a player encountered a Kaom-worshipping cult in their dungeon. The dungeon was styled after 18th century England. The Calamity cult had taken over London and was preparing a ritual to summon chaos. According to their teachings, whoever falls under the gaze of chaos will be haunted by disasters, and eventually the entire world will plunge into chaos and perish. Qinglin folded her arms and said, this ability to bring disasters, it matches the description of his calamity mark. Goyan picked up the piece of paper and cut himself on it. He cried out in pain and asked, is there a way to remove this curse in the archive? Bai spread his hands and answered, no. In this dungeon, the goal of the quest was to disrupt the ritual. So the Calamity Star never descended on the earth. However, if it were to manifest, the energy level of it would be at least at the catastrophe level, which is the highest known threat level. In other words, he is the only player who has encountered an anomaly of this level and survived. MC removed his hand from his shoulder and said that if he doesn't figure out what to do about it, he probably won't live long. Qinglin put the amulet on the table and Goyun asked what it is. She replied that it is a good luck charm. A temporary solution, but not a panacea. There's good luck sealed in it that can compensate for his bad luck, at least it won't interfere with his daily life. MC hugged it to his chest and Qinglin told him not to rejoice too soon. There are two problems. The first is that his bad luck will get worse over time, and the luck in the talisman is limited. MC put the talisman in his inner pocket and said, so he still has to find a way to get rid of the curse, he understands. What is the second problem? Qinglin replied that the second problem is money. Goyun asked puzzledly, what is she talking about? Qinglin turned away slightly embarrassedly and replied, he will have to pay. This is a very valuable thing, and the organization can't just give it away. He will need to provide an equivalent artifact. After some time, there were talismans, several potions, and balls on the table. MC said, this is not a problem. Is this enough? If not, he still has some. Bai looked at it carefully and said, mind cleansing pills, wound medicine, Ju fruits, water defense pills, fire defense pills. Qinglin asked, are these all quest rewards? Where did he get so many? Goyen scratched his temple and replied, "These are small things. They can hardly keep up with his growing strength, but there are a lot of them. As for the source, it is his parents' inheritance." Bai cleared his throat and said, "They will return to the matter with the talisman. Now they have one more piece of information for him, about his parents." MC cried out in surprise. "What? About his parents? They found. Where are they?" Bai held his hand out in front of him and said, "No, not yet. He should calm down." He took out a book and asked him to look at this. MC picked up the book and asked, "An auction catalog? What is this?" Bai held up 3 fingers and said, "In 3 days, there will be an auction in Jiangcheng, organized by the largest black market for players, the Black Stone Trading House. In his hands is a list of goods that will be put up for auction. And now he needs to look at the 3rd page. Does he see this symbol in the corner?" Guyan looked at it and replied, "He does." He remembered how his father made a toy car, and said, "It's done, Guyan. Let him take it and play." MC shouted happily and raised it above his head. On the back of the toy, the same icon he saw on the page was visible. He asked in surprise, "Dad, what kind of symbol is this?" Dad smiled and replied, "This is Dad's mark. He puts this on all his works. That way his son can always know what things he made." At present, MC asked, "This is his father's mark, but what is this glass bottle?" Bai replied, "It is a lighthouse. In the game Original Sin, the standard start cycle is 7 days. However, the lighthouse allows you to start the game at any time. Since it gives you the opportunity to gain additional power, it is a very rare and valuable artifact." Guyan replied, "That's how it is. But why is there his father's mark on the lighthouse?" Bai shook his head and said that they don't know either. All that is known is that from time to time, players find artifacts with his mark and get some information from them. That is why his personal file is marked as possible defector. MC said, "So he knows that he saw the file." Bai winked and asked, "Did he think that his call sign and the fact that Fan Xingzi became his handler were just a coincidence?" They deliberately revealed this information to him. Although the Bureau officially recognized Feng Mian as a traitor, many of them disagreed. Therefore, Go Yin, they must attain this beacon. MC showed the auction catalog and asked, "So Uncle Bai, he wants him to go to this auction?" Qinglin snatched it from his hands and said, "Not him, but them." Professor Bai proposed that the 2 of them represent the organization at the auction, and the Bureau agreed. Bai smiled and said, "Not only that, he also got a small team and housing for them. Now they are officially in the same squad." He put his hand first on Qinglin's shoulder and then on MC's shoulder and pushed them closer to each other. Bai said happily, "They will live together, and if something happens to the talisman, Qin Yao will be able to help him." MC cried out in displeasure. "What?" After a while, they were riding in a train compartment. MC said thoughtfully, "The older generation loves matchmaking. He'll have to talk to Uncle Bai later." Qinglin frowned and replied, "There's no need for that. Each team is assigned a 3-story building as a base. That's standard practice, not cohabitation like he thought." Guyan folded his arms and said, "So that's how it is. Well, if that's the case, it's not for nothing that they have a reputation for being smart." Qinglin said, "Besides, she doesn't mind Professor Bai's decision at all." MC yelled in surprise. "What?" She replied that he'd been funding the orphanage for 3 years. "Why?" Guyan ruffled his hair and replied, "To build up his merits. Well, he's an orphan now too, so he thought that if he could help, he should help." Qinglin said, "So that's a good answer." At that moment, in the professor's office, Feng Xingzi folded her arms in displeasure and asked, "Old man Bai, has he decided to match the captain with this Zhu Long? Can the guy even handle it?" Previously, crowds used to run after the captain, but she had never seen her smile at anyone. Bai smiled and replied, "She doesn't understand. Qinglin is an orphan." Xingzi asked, "What's so strange about that?" "Most of their curators are orphans." Bai replied, "She's still young. She'll understand in time." Xingzi said, "She hates them, the old riddle makers. Here, let him take the requested data." Bai examined the documents and grabbed his head. He asked, "Is the Apocalypse sect making a fuss again?" After a while, the Punisher entered the office and asked Boss, "Did he call?" The boss ordered him to gather a group and go to Jiangcheng. The Punisher asked again, "Jiangcheng for the auction? Isn't that what Rotten Blood does?" The boss replied, "He'll go to help him. They need the beacon to go to either them or the Security Bureau." The Punisher asked again, "Bureau? Why can they?" The chief pictured the MC and replied, "Because they sent the Prophet's son there. At the same time, he'll test what he's capable of." After a while, in another space, guys were kneeling and begging with tears in their eyes to believe them. "Captain, he's lying. It's the real him." Li Cha frowned and thought, "Horror, it's impossible to tell." Lu Jie said he was real. Li Cha drew his sword from its sheath and screamed, He's a fake." He cut Lu Jie's throat, who spoke, "Captain." Li Cha looked at his dead subordinate in fear, and the clone stood up and said mockingly, "It's a pity." He was wrong again. Li Cha swung his sword and cut the shadow, ordering him to die. The shadow spoke, "His chances exhausted. Next time let him come with reinforcements." The dark energy streams began to dissolve, removing the dome. Li Cha fell to his knees and cried, screaming loudly at the same time. The employee reported that the containment of the anomaly had failed. Only one person from the 7th squad survived. He repeats, the containment of the anomaly had failed. At this moment, MC and Qinglin received a message on their phones, which they looked at carefully. MC put his phone down and stretched, saying that he wanted to rest for a few days before the auction, but it seems like he can forget about it. Qinglin replied, if the mission cost the lives of almost the entire squad, it was clearly not an easy one. She put the earphone in her ear and ordered Iris to send her a full mission report. Iris replied, accepted. The documents have been sent to her phone. A message appeared on Qinglin's phone. The name of the mission, Mirror Wraith. The type, Wandering Anomaly, and the time of appearance was 48 hours ago. The threat level, Bishop. The infection radius, less than 30 meters. Special notes, the target has high intelligence and the ability to act strategically. Qinglin grabbed the bridge of her nose and asked, was the demon squad assigned to this mission? Guyan asked, what's wrong with them? She looked at him and replied, he hasn't heard of demons yet. In other words, they are a bunch of problem children. Their mission completion rates are high, but they don't care about casualties or consequences at all. Especially their captain, Li Cha, callsign Demon. He lost all his men this time, so he'll be even less cooperative than usual. After a while, the train arrived at the right station and they got off. MC and Qinglin were met by an employee who said that this was the latest mission data they managed to find out. Suddenly, MC felt an ominous mana to the side and pushed the employee away. He fell to the ground, and Li Cha landed next to him, covered in dark mana. The employee stretched out his hand and shouted, Li Cha, is this reinforcements from the special forces? What is he doing? He shouted, revenge, he will take revenge himself. He doesn't need the help of 2 greenhorns who have only completed 2 games. Don't worry, he will only break their arms and legs, he will not kill. Li Cha jumped up and rushed forward. He swung his sword and used Ghost Flash. MC dodged his blow and turned around displeased. Guyan asked, a squad of demons, huh? Li Cha thought in fear, so fast. MC struck him and threw him back. He thought in fear, gold rank? This can't be. At this moment, MC had already approached him and asked who he was going to cut off his arms and legs. He hit Li Cha in the head and he flew back again. Guyan thought in displeasure, boy, he's stubborn as a rock. Li Cha grabbed his sword and then stood up and activated a terrifying mana. The employee screamed, bad. The demon is out of control. We need to contact the organization and call for cleanup. Li Cha grabbed his face and ordered him to be quiet. He hasn't lost control yet. He just needs to get out of here. The dark mana returned to his body, and MC asked, what's going on? Qinglin replied, Li Cha's ability is the result of a demonic contract. When he is injured or loses his temper, there is a high risk that he will go berserk. That is why the 7th squad is called the Demon Squad. Li Cha pointed his sword at her and said that they are not demons. They are a squad of heroes. MC replied, real heroes don't attack new comrades. Li Cha clicked his tongue in displeasure and said, they are too weak. They are just going to be slaughtered. He turned away and asked, he is in pain. Where is the backup? Someone, let them bandage him. The staff member wiped the sweat from his forehead and asked them to forgive this incident. He asks them to come with him. They will go to another place. After a while, in the office, the employee was showing a presentation and said that the mirror ghost is their current target. The last time he was recorded was in the form of Liu Gei, a former fighter of the 7th squad, nicknamed the Bird of Prey. MC thoughtfully asked, form, is he able to copy the appearance of others? Suddenly, a loud scream was heard from behind him, not just the form. He turned around and saw Li Cha, who said, appearance, abilities, voice, even memories, he can copy all of them. It's like a mirror that reflects a person, and everything from the reflection is dragged into reality. Hence the name, Mirror Demon. So if they are too weak and he copies him, they will not survive. MC pointed his finger at himself and asked, what will he do if he copies him then? Li Cha shouted in annoyance, does he really think he can't kill him? At this moment, Qinglin slammed her hand on the table and said, enough. The main thing is this is a mission. Judging by the description, this monster is more suitable for solo hunting. Why are they sending a team? Li Cha replied, because if you go alone, this bastard will simply disappear from the battlefield, teleporting away. The staff member held up 3 fingers and said that bishop-level monsters often have multiple abilities. The mirror demon can copy people, teleport when meeting a single opponent, and arrange deadly riddles. Li Cha slammed his hand on the table and said, he becomes one of his allies and makes them guess who is real and who is fake. If he guesses wrong, the original dies. Guyan frowned and said, this sounds complicated. Did they manage to find a way to recognize him? The employee shook his head and Li Cha threw his sword on the table and said, the solution is simple. If someone is copied, the rest just kill both the copy and the original. Then everything is under control. MC asked, that's why he attacked them at the station? Li Cha smiled and answered, that's right. He needed to make sure that they were able to kill him. Goyun looked towards the employee and asked, "Did the organization approve of this plan too?" The employee answered, "In a way, how can we minimize losses?" Lee Cha said, "He killed 4 of his comrades, he will make sure that he dies." MC sighed and said, "He's overdoing it." Did they even check what would happen if someone gained a new ability after being copied? After a while, the taxi driver shouted in displeasure. Why was the road suddenly blocked? The policeman said that there was a possible gas leak ahead. They asked him to change the route. MC looked at this and asked why it was impossible to tell people about the existence of anomalies. If they knew in advance, some of these incidents could be prevented. Qinglin replied that the more people knew about it, the more often they begin to appear. He should ask Professor Bai for details. Suddenly, the employee pointed his finger forward and shouted, "The mirror demon is ahead. According to observations, if there is no activation within 2 hours, it will disappear again." Li Cha looked at the mirror and asked if he is sure his plan will work. MC replied that if not, they will proceed according to his plan. The guys walked up to the mirror and looked there. A dark energy dome formed above them, and the employee said, "Mirror maze formation detected. The second phase of isolation begins." Guyan clenched his fists and thought that this was the space created by the mirror demon. This time, he copied. Li Cha and his clone appeared in front of him, who ordered him to choose who was real. MC smiled and asked for forgiveness, but he refuses to choose. Li Cha rushed towards his clone and ordered him to die. MC looked at them carefully and thought, "A perfect copy is really hard to distinguish, but this one also has flaws." He said, "Since the combat capabilities are the same, the result will be mutual destruction. In the end, all that remains is to finish them off. Of course, this also means that the copied person will die. People are afraid of death, so this option is almost impossible. But he shouldn't have run into a teenager. For him, his death is more important than his life right now. So, checkmate." Suddenly, Li Cha activated the ritual flag, and Guyan asked, was he going to cheat? At that moment, the employee said that the collapse of the mirror cocoon was detected. The internal state is unknown. The demon turned into MC, and he asked, did he turn into him? That's reasonable. He really isn't ready to sacrifice himself to destroy the anomalies. Li Cha took out his sword and said, 1 minute. If he doesn't prove who he is in a minute, he will kill both of them. MC said, no rush, they will go in order. First, they will check if he can copy items. He activated the summoned tiger, and the clone repeated. Guyan said, not only the equipment, even the summoned entities are completely duplicated. Li Cha said, it looks like his plan has failed. The protagonist looked at his clone in bewilderment, who stood in front of the Wheel of Fortune with his arms folded across his chest and said, skill extraction system. The protagonist thought in bewilderment, skills? This can't be. How could he not copy everything? The system reported, a skill was obtained, a dash, a fleeting glance, a blow of fury. The clone looked at the system windows with a smile and said, 2 combat skills. Not bad luck. MC pointed his finger at him and shouted, he was bluffing on purpose, so that he would think that he was real. He shouldn't believe him. The clone swung his fist and asked, really? Then he resolutely ran into the attack and, approaching the protagonist's face, stopped. He said that this can't be. How could he not copy this skill? He replied, it's a pity, but he didn't copy the main thing, the donation system. After that, he concentrated the energy in his fist and used a fury strike. The next attack gets a 150% bonus to strength, 15 minutes cooldown. After that, he hit the protagonist and he flew back. He clenched his fist and added, he said, checkmate. After some time, the protagonist stood in front of the clone, who was kneeling, and told him to look. Less than a minute has passed, right? Cha took his sword out of its sheath and shouted, his time has come. A fake. After that, he pointed the sword at the clone, and it suddenly dissolved and turned into liquid, from which a mannequin was formed, dressed in the protagonist's clothes. He poked his finger into his chest and asked, so this is his true appearance? After exposure, he loses all abilities, becomes completely defenseless. After some time, the system congratulated the owner on the fact that he completely revealed the ecosystem of the anomaly. Encyclopedia updated. Mirror Demon. There are 4 more pages to unlock to get the reward. Good luck in the future. He looked at the system window and said, the executioner ghost, the father and daughter from the museum, the spirit body Tom, and now the mirror ghost. The task was finally over halfway through. He sighed and added, but with such difficulty, it is unclear what they will give as a reward. Then Cha swung his sword and divided the mannequin's body into 2 parts, but the liquid restored the body again, and he shouted, damn! This is a spirit body. MC put his hand on his shoulder and, pointing his finger at himself, said if he does not mind, then he should leave this to him. He promises. He will regret that he was born at all. After that, he put his hand to the side and took out a statue of a ghost mother from the portal that appeared. A powerful, terrifying aura emanated from it. Cha asked, what kind of thing is this? The protagonist, sitting down next to him, answered, it's okay, it's not dangerous. After that, he told the statue that she could eat it. The next second, the body of the mirror demon was absorbed by terrifying energy. Meanwhile, on the city street, people were going about their business. Evil blood stood out in the crowd. She walked forward when suddenly a man put his hand on her shoulder, and one of the bandits, folding his arms over his chest, grinned, said, "Girl, it's not safe to walk alone at night. Will she come with them?" She, smiling, put her hands to her lips and answered, "Of course." After that, they entered a dark alley, and she, licking her finger, asked, "Is it all over?" She thought that they would have fun longer. She stood near several corpses and, crouching down near her arachnids and reptiles, said, "Okay, kids, it's time to go back." At that moment, she heard someone approach her from behind and pointed the snake at the unexpected guest. Slaughter squeezed the snake in his hand and said, it was not worth giving such an expensive gift at the first meeting. She wondered, why was he here? He threw the snake to her and replied that the boss sent him to help. She bowed her head and asked, "Because of the lighthouse? Since when did they have such a surplus of people?" He waved his hand and replied, "It is not only the lighthouse. The son of the prophets joined the bureau." The boss told her to evaluate what he is capable of. And what did she do all this time? She looked at her hand and replied, "Walked around the sites of Zhongcheng, ate local delicacies and desserts, bought souvenirs, and also placed a mirror demon and destroyed one of the bureau teams. Chaos will soon break out in the city." She turned to him and added, "He is late. There is nothing else to do here." She bit her finger and said, "The golden silkworm has hibernated. The mirror demon has been destroyed. The bureau or someone else?" He replied that he thought it was the prophet's son. The boss must have foreseen this. That's why he sent him. She asked for what purpose. He turned around and replied that she shouldn't worry. It was a real bomb, enough to make the whole city go crazy, but she had to wait until the auction was over. She shouldn't rush. He wanted to spread chaos even more than she did. They probably needed the prophet's information and protection from his possible moves. He put his hand on her shoulder, and she clicked her tongue indignantly. Meanwhile, the worker held the object in his hands and asked what kind of thing it was. MC put his hand forward and replied that they found it inside the mirror demon's body. It seemed to be something artificial. He should take it away for analysis. He replied that he understood, and then called on the phone and reported that the anomaly had been successfully isolated. The task was completed. 2 days later, the protagonist sat on his bed and ordered the system to open the inventory. He noticed the merit points, 1,145,101, and thoughtfully said, although he spent a little, the balance is still decreasing. It's annoying. Then, he noticed the mail icon and asked what it was. He clicked on it, and the system reported the achievement system. Black Rain, he saved Bai Ling. The reward is 1,000 merit points. Distraction, he destroyed the Mad Prophet. The reward is 10,000 merit points can be obtained. Gallery Horrors, he destroyed the growing anomaly in the museum. The reward is 50,000 merit points can be obtained. Curse with no exit, he put an end to the curse in Haishui village. The reward is 100,000 merit points can be obtained. No losses, no one died in his first game. The reward is 20,000 merit points can be obtained. He imagined himself in a scattering of gold coins, and, adjusting his hair, said that the more he spends, the more comes. Here it is, a real god of donations. At that moment, Qinglin knocked on his room, and folding her arms across her chest, said that it was time to go. The auction would start soon. They went out into the corridor, and she added that, in order not to reveal their identities, everyone would enter from a separate entrance. First, they would take the masks. He agreed with her. After that, they used the elevator and found themselves on the right floor. One of the workers bowed and said, "Gentlemen, they must be the honored guests of the auction? Please, they must like the mask." Qinglin made her choice, and MC, taking the remaining one, said that this one would suit him. He took it in his hands and thought that a wave of spiritual energy emanated from the mask. Enchanted with some kind of spell? He used the skill Fleeting Glance. The system reported a mask of disguise, rarity, blue. Masks the spiritual characteristics of the wearer, changes the appearance, making it difficult to describe. He thought in surprise, a fleeting glance, a skill that he hastily bought before the fight with the mirror demon, turned out to be ideal for evaluating items, on topic for the auction. After that, they left the building, and the worker, opening the door, said that personal transport had already been prepared for them. He asked to follow them. When they got into the car, the ghost driver asked where they were going. Qinglin, putting on a mask, answered, "To the Black Stone auction." He answered, "Accepted." The protagonist, putting on a mask, asked, "Artifact masks and a ghost driver?" This auction house did not skimp on luxury. She replied that they have a unique technology. Many players prefer to buy from them, so they strengthen their influence. He asked in bewilderment, "What kind of technology?" She looked at him and answered, "You can directly trade achievement points." Why does he have such a face? He folded his arms across his chest and bit his lip, saying, Nothing, just thinking of something pleasant. After that, they set off. After a while, they arrived at the right place, and getting out of the car, MC said that he didn't expect the place to be so luxurious. Qinglin, getting out of the transport, asked what did he expect to see? An abandoned warehouse? At that moment, the worker in front of them bowed, and turning to them, said that he asked them to come in. The auction was about to begin. They approached the entrance, when suddenly Su Jianguo shouted, "Please, they must let him in. He only needs to buy one thing. He has money." He was kneeling on the ground, while the workers held his hands. He shouted, 50 million. They must let him in. Qinglin, turning around, said, "It seems like someone from the common people found out about the auction. Too bad, but the local currency means nothing here." The man continued shouting, "His daughter is also a player. He asks for them. He only needs one awakening item. He doesn't want her to die." The protagonist activated the skill Glimpse and the system reported, Su Jianguo, race, human. Abilities, none. Note, is related to the player Sume. Turning to his partner, he asked her to wait for a minute and then walked up to the workers and shouted at them to stop. He squatted down next to Jianguo and put his hand out in front of him and asked, "Is he Mr. Su? Has he come to buy an awakening item for his daughter?" He confirmed it. "Sir, is he willing to buy this for him? 1 billion. He will pay 1 billion. He just has to buy one thing for him." He shook his head and replied, "No need." He took out an item from his inside pocket and told him to take this bottle of Jade Dew. One of the best awakening items. One of the workers, perplexed, thought, "Jade Dew? This almost never happens even at auction, and he just gave it away?" And his colleague shouted, "What a grand gesture." Turning to his partner, he asked who this rich man was anyway. He replied that he had never seen such a mask. Who was this buyer really? And then the protagonist left the item on the pavement and, turning to the workers, told them to take it home. Let no one even try to take this thing away from him. One of them replied, "Yes, they will ensure the completion of the task." Then Jianguo began to bow and repeat words of gratitude. MC, stopping, put his hand forward and replied, "No need, he just needs to tell Sume to come to the bureau." After that, he went to Qinglin and she asked, "Mei is the player he mentioned in the report?" He replied that it is. She has an outstanding gift. After that, they came to a huge door and the workers, pressing with their whole body, opened it. A view of a luxurious hall opened up, and the protagonist said, "This is the Blackstone auction house. The players founded it even before the bureau appeared." He thought, but since he has the ability to pay with achievement points, it's time to spend it well. He adjusted his mask, and then they went to their seats. The MC was approaching the chair when the worker pointed with his hand and replied that he needed to sit here. After that, the spotlights turned on, illuminating the presenter's podium. He approached the podium and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the specialized auction of the Blackstone Trading House is about to begin. They must keep their numbers with them and not miss the lots they like. Each of these is unique." Qinglin, leaning towards the protagonist, said, "The organization allocated 100,000 achievement points. The cost of the beacon is usually about 50,000. If there are extra points left, you can buy something else." Then the host pointed his finger at the first item and announced, "The first lot is the Bone Jug of 5 Ghosts, a low-grade magical artifact. Small spirits are grown inside, capable of using the 5 Ghosts transfer technique. The price for use is raw meat. The starting price is 3,500 achievement points." The hall was filled with shouts, 4,000, 4,500, 6,000, 7,500. The protagonist thought, a low-grade magic item costs about 10,000 points, and even then, with restrictions on use. Things like the White Tiger Seal, artifacts for both attack and defense, are generally impossible to get. Then the host hit the hammer and said that today's auction is very lively. They all understand. The first lots are just a warm-up. Then he waved his hand and added, "And now, one of the main lots tonight." He removed the cloth from the sword in the glass and shouted, "High-grade magic sword. Gu." Inside is the spirit of the ferocious beast Kaimin, terrifying and unmatched, drives away hundreds of ghosts. A terrifying aura spread throughout the hall, and the protagonist thought, "What an ominous aura. No wonder it is called the Pearl of the Auction." He used the skill Glimpse, and the system reported, the ancient sword, Daxia Moon Sparrow, is damaged. Quality, legendary, orange. Description: the last sword forged by the great master Oyezi at the end of his life. Because of its ferocity, it was sealed. Inside the sword sleeps the spirit of the weapon Moon Sparrow, a devourer of dragons and phoenixes, fierce and indomitable. The protagonist thought, legendary. Even in a damaged state, it is still legendary. After that, the host hit the hammer and shouted, "The starting price is 30,000 achievement points. They can start bidding." Shouts were heard in the hall, 35,000, 40,000, 46,000, 51,000. Then the MC raised his number and said, 100,000. An awkward silence hung. Qinglin, taking his hand, said, "The lighthouse is their top priority." He replied that he knows. he will take this thing at his own expense. After that, the host hit the hammer again and, raising his hands, shouted, 100,000 points, the first bet of this level in the evening. Buyer number 16 offers 100,000. Are there any willing to outbid? The participant, raising his number, said 110,000. The protagonist answered 150,000. He shouted 160,000. Kid, he shouldn't stick his nose where it's not wanted. The protagonist, looking at him, grinned, old man, there's no point in dragging it out if you don't have the money. 200,000. Those present were perplexed. 200,000? An unfamiliar voice. Where did this newbie come from? Even for a high-grade artifact, 200,000 points are too much. At that moment, a worker approached the host and whispered something in his ear. After that, he raised 2 fingers and said, Mr. Number 16, his bet is twice the balance on the account. Before confirming this, they need to check its balance. The participant chuckled. He was just a young upstart. An empty bluff. The demand for black stone in the house was tough for that. The MC crossed his legs and answered, Can I? How will they check? One of the workers provided a sphere, and the host, pointing with his hand, said, Please, he just needs to put his hand on this crystal. It will scan his balance. But he can rest assured, it does not collect any other information. The protagonist waved his hand and answered, Okay. Addressing the system, he ordered to exchange 1 million achievement points. After that, he went to the crystal and put it on this hand. The next second, everything lit up with golden light, and an inscription appeared on the ceiling. The participant, starting to fall off his chair, asked in bewilderment, 1 million? This is impossible. 1 million achievement points. He has never seen such numbers in his entire life. Shouts were heard in the hall. Gold level? No, perhaps it is someone with the law level. Does anyone know who he is? The protagonist asked, Are there no questions now? The worker cleared his throat and then replied, Of course, no questions. He put his hand on his hip and said that they were continuing the auction. Buyer number 16 offered 200,000. No one else wanted to outbid. There was silence in response, and he said, It seemed like there really was no. After that, he hit the hammer and shouted that they congratulated buyer number 16. The Gaiue sword was now his. The audience began to applaud, and the protagonist bowed and thanked everyone. After that, the host shouted that they were continuing. The next lot was a middle-class material, a blood-red vine. The starting bid was 1,000 achievement points. An hour later, the host hit the hammer and said, Sold. They congratulate buyer number 42 on buying a copper mirror with a spirit of resentment. MC thought about it. Ordinary materials that can be exchanged in the store. It seems like he won't be able to snatch something rare today. Then the host said, But the next lot is special. Even the experts of the Blackstone House could not give an exact report on this, but they are sure that there is a powerful spiritual energy in it. He put his hand on the cloth covering the items, added, and most importantly, it clearly reacts to most anomalies. After that, he removed the cover and added, The starting price is 1 point. They can begin. The protagonist put his hand on his shoulder and thought, Hot. Did the disaster beacon react? He activated the skill fleeting glance, and the system reported that the information is unknown. He thought, even a fleeting glance could not determine. Better safe than sorry. You need to take it. After that, he raised his number and shouted, 10,000. Those present were surprised, and he, awkwardly scratching the back of his head, said, A bid of 10,000 has already been made, then 50,000. Qinglin grabbed her head and said, It was just 20,500. He was surprised, and then the host hit the hammer and shouted, Sold. He raised his hand and shouted, They congratulate buyer number 16 on purchasing a mysterious stone seal for 50,000 achievement points. Shouts were heard. Did he find money on the road? It seems his brains leaked out in the dungeon. Maybe he is a member of the auction house Blackstone? He threw down several sheets of paper and shouted, Even though he is a rich man, the main thing is that he snatched the lot. Then the host adjusted his bow tie and, putting his hand to his side, said that he was sure that they had all been waiting for it. And now, their main lot tonight. In front of them is a lighthouse. There's no need to talk about its value, but this lighthouse is special. Yes, they heard right. This has the mark of the prophet. Without exception, and the Bureau of Anomalies, and the Cult of the End of the World, and the new organization Evolutionists, they are all hunting for the knowledge of the prophet. The starting price is 100,000 achievement points. Shouts were heard, 100,000, 150,000, 180,000. The protagonist thought that these buyers had not bid before, so they really were waiting for this particular lot. Qinglin raised her number and said, 200,000. Shouts were heard, 210,000, 220, 225. She looked at the main character and said that the organization had underestimated the value of this beacon, but they needed it at any cost. He took her number and told her not to worry, he would not allow anyone else to get his father's creation. Then he raised the number and said, 500,000. The people present opened their mouths in surprise. The host, trembling, asked, "Buyer number 16? Are you sure he didn't misspeak?" He folded his arms across his chest and shook his head, answering, "Of course not, 500,000. This beacon must be his." The host asked if there were any more people willing to outbid. The others lowered their numbers, and he said that in that case they congratulated buyer number 16. He hit the hammer and shouted, "The lot is sold." The next second the lights went out in the room. The participant asked in surprise, what was going on? People were shouting, "Who turned off the lights?" The MC asked, "A power outage?" Qinglin replied that it was not so. At an auction of this level it was impossible. Someone intervened. The next second, the host, looking into the glass box, shouted, the lot had disappeared. The protagonist stood up from his seat and, perplexed, shouted, "What?" He used Yin's eyes and, looking around, noticed how the evil blood aura was standing out. He pointed his finger at it and shouted, "This servant, something is wrong with her. She must put down the beacon." She put her hand to her mouth and, smiling, said, "Got caught." After that, she took off her concealing clothes and, throwing it up, said, "But then they must receive a small gift from her." The next second, several monsters crawled out from under the ground. The protagonist, looking at this, asked, "Undead? And 4 nights at that?" Those present shouted, "Snakes? There are snakes!" He was bitten. The reptiles attacked the participants. One of them fell to the ground, foam coming out of his mouth, and he said, "Poison." MC looked at the insects, and Evil Blood said, "Well, that's it. They should have fun with her cute babies," and she went. The protagonist, crushing the scolopendra, ran after her, and stretching out his hand forward, shouted for her to stop. She must give up the beacon. Then he turned around and, sharply moving away, dodged the knight's attack. He crashed into Qinglin's back with his back. She, turning around, asked, "2 for each?" He answered, "Great." After that, he concentrated energy in his hands, and the knight attacked in front of him. The protagonist swung and hit the opponent's chest, piercing it through. A powerful aura spread throughout the room, and then he turned around and said that he dealt with one. "How is she?" Behind Qinglin were 2 fallen knights, and she asked what he was talking about. He said indignantly that she was cheating. He then jumped to the side, dodging the knight's attack, and leaned his back against the wall of the table. Leaning over to the worker who was trembling with fear, he put his hand on the glass box with the sword and said, "He bought this. He can use it, right?" He replied that he can take it, of course. The protagonist melted the glass, and then took the sword in his hand. He swung his sword, splitting the knight into 2, and, looking at the blade more closely, said, "How powerful." He thought that even in its damaged state, this is so strong, no wonder it is a legendary weapon. The next second, he put his finger on the headset, and Feng Xingzi said, "Things are bad. Many monsters have appeared in Zhangcheng. There are echo levels and bishop levels. They are already attacking civilians. This is going to turn into a major disaster." At this moment, the pianist was playing, spreading the melody around. Slaughter, standing on the edge of the roof, spread his arms out to the sides and shouted, "A little more chaos. Just a little more. The end of the world has come." Then he laughed loudly. At this moment, Qinglin said, "This is a doomsday cult. Their member, nicknamed Evil Blood, just attacked the auction and stole the beacon." Xingzi said that she will pass on all the information to the authorities, and the 2 of them must act urgently. Because of the mirror demon, the Zhangcheng squad suffered heavy losses. They can't handle all the monsters. The protagonist thought, the monsters are out of control. There aren't enough operatives. He looked at the auction participants who were covering themselves from the insects and said that he has an idea. The buyers in this auction were players, right? At this moment, one of them, still foaming at the mouth, said, "An antidote. Someone, they must save him." The next second, the MC put up a sign, "The antidote is unlimited." He pointed to the plate with capsules and shouted into the megaphone, "Poison players, they must come. You can get antidotes for free here. They must not pass by, they must not miss the chance." One of the players raised his hand and shouted, "He needs it. He must give one urgently." Another customer shouted that he was already on the verge. "Him first." The protagonist put his hand in front of him and told them to wait. He would give the antidote, but they also had to do something for him. They shouted, "What exactly?" He had to say it faster. He raised his index finger and said, "Destroy the monster that appeared in the Zhangcheng district." Of course, not for free. Echo level monster, 1,000 achievement points for anything. Knight level, 5,000 points for one. Bishop level, 30,000 points. How about them? They started to talk. 1,000 points for one echo. That's easy money. Much safer than risking their lives by playing the game. Then they said they agreed. What if he makes excuses and runs away later? The protagonist pointed at Qinglin and said that he had a representative of the Human Protection Bureau with him. Even if they didn't believe him, they should believe her, right? She took off her mask and, presenting her ID, said that this task was considered an official assignment from the Human Protection Bureau. They asked for everyone's full cooperation. Clark scratched his beard and said, "Girl, there aren't just a couple of monsters in the city right now, but a real wave." At the price this young man offered, the preliminary estimate is over 2 million achievement points. Will the Bureau really be able to cover it? She answered uncertainly, "Well." At that moment, the protagonist put his hand on the crystal and asked, "Only 2 million? There's no point in even bothering the Bureau with such trifles." The gold sum appeared on the ceiling again, and he asked, "Have they calmed down now?" An hour later, panic hung in the city. The girl fell to the ground and screamed in fear. A monster. A goblin stood above her, ready to attack at any moment, but the next second a player attacked him with a huge sword, cutting him in half. He was breathing heavily, and then clenched his fist and said that this is great, and another 1,000 points to the piggy bank. He transmitted into the headset, "Clear, there are no more monsters on Changning Street. Where to next?" Xingzi asked, "Is he sure he doesn't want to take a break? He is only a silver rank, and he has already killed 3. Does he still have spiritual power left?" He smiled, hit himself in the chest, and replied, "As long as they pay points, he has more than enough strength. He can kill 5 more. She put her hand to her forehead and, sighing, said, "Okay, then he should head to East Street. 300 meters from here, there is a night-level monster. 2 players are already waiting." The woman rose to her feet and, putting her hand to her chest, wanted to thank him, but he quickly ran forward and shouted, "A night is 5,000 points. Even if divided by 3, 1,500. Let's go." Xingzi at this moment grabbed her head and shouted, "Where did Guyun find such people? Each one is crazier than the other, as if they were all pumped with doping." And then she paid attention to the incoming call. MC asked, "How is the situation?" She answered, "Everything is great. Mr. Guyun, the mass participation of players effectively curbs the spread of monsters. The affected area has significantly decreased. But regarding the points in the achievement for rewards, since all this was his own initiative and was not formalized in advance, the organization may not be able to reimburse the costs." He threw the monster into the wall and replied, "No big deal. The main thing is that the problem is solved." Turning to the system, he ordered to open the achievement interface. It said, "Supernatural Disaster." He led the players in destroying an echo-level monster. The reward was 300 virtue points. He led the players in destroying a night-level monster. The reward was 1,000 virtue points. He led the players in destroying an echo-level monster. The reward was 300 virtue points. He led the players in destroying a bishop-level monster. The reward was 10,000 virtue points. He clapped his hands and thought, he knew it. He spent less than he earned. What a thrill. Qinglin put her fingers on the headset and asked, "Have they found out the source of the mutation?" Xingzi confirmed it while looking through the documents. Thanks to their information, they narrowed it down to the Doomsday Cult. The analysis department has already determined the cause. The culprit is a temple-level monster from the Doomsday Cult. Codename, Pianist. The protagonist and Qinglin simultaneously thought temple level. Xingzi added that the last time the pianist appeared was in the North American city of Muto. More than 300,000 dead, the city was completely destroyed. MC said that now they want to repeat the Muto disaster here. But why? Qinglin put her hand on his shoulder and said, "The Doomsday Cult believes that chaos is the truth, so they aim to destroy everything and speed up the end of the world. But this time they won't succeed." Xingzi added, "According to the data, as the melody continues, the pianist will summon increasingly powerful monsters, eventually temple-level creatures and above. One of the last stand squad members has already moved to Jiangcheng. Before he arrives, they must try to stop the pianist's game at all costs." The protagonist looked at his partner and asked, "The last stand, what is it?" She replied that the last stand is the elite of the Human Protection Bureau. Only 5 people, all law-level players. They are the true last stand of humanity. He scratched his head awkwardly and sighed. Well, even if they have to stall for time, he doesn't know where the pianist is. Xingzi quickly typed something on the keyboard and said that they were currently tracking his location using the anomalies from the monsters and had already determined the approximate area. She asked the 2 of them to go to the western sector. When the exact coordinates were known, she would immediately report. They agreed with her. At this moment, Cha was flying over the city, jumping from the walls of buildings. He said that he had arrived in the western sector. Nothing unusual so far. Then he turned his gaze to the side and saw notes coming from the roof of the building. He rose higher and reported that the pianist had been detected, was on the roof of the grain trading company building, and was beginning the isolation procedure.